Hiya Benchmates, welcome to episode 27 of Beyond the Box Art with a transatlantic guest with the one and only Rob Riviezzo. Your host, as usual, is Brownie with his co-hosts Dan, Nebs, Balders, Shane and the return of Spencer Pollard.
Benchmates, welcome to episode 27 of Beyond the Box Art, your workbench companion where models, modelers and meaning come together. And what a show we've got lined up for you today. After the brilliant response to our Lena core crew, seriously, the feedback has been absolutely superb, so thank you for all the messages. We're keeping things sharp, focused and right where you want it. We'll be joined by our super sub, and you have to listen to episode 25 to get that reference for this episode as our main guest. We'll also pick up on the announcements from episode 26 from Ilya and Will from DBMK with their upcoming releases. So whether you're at the bench, in the car, or sneaking 5 minutes with a brew and a sanding stick, settle in. This is episode 27 of Beyond the Box Art, and it starts now. So joining me for this episode are Dan.
Hiya Benchmates.
Nevs.
Welcome back everybody.
Boulders.
Hello Benchmates.
Shane.
How's it going, Benchmates?
And return of the one and only Spencer Pollard.
Hello everyone.
Now, obviously Boulder's been away on his hollybobs, getting nice and sunned. So what have you been working on since you got back?
So I'm still waiting for stuff on the Imperial Japanese cruiser Magan, not to be confused with something else. So I have cracked open the 1 to 450th QE2, so which is going to be for the Bolton show for 2027, because the theme is the 45th anniversary of the Falklands, and she played a crucial role as a troop transport ship, and I've even managed to get all the 1 to 450th scale HU5 Wessexes.
Where did you get those from?
Somebody was selling them on AliExpress.
Okay.
So obviously, and there is files out there that you can pay for. They're only a couple of quid, but I just thought I might as well just bite the bullet and get somebody. So yeah, there's 3 winging their way towards me. So they'll be a nice little addition to the back end, because I've got to scratch build a helicopter landing pad on the front and the back of the ship, because obviously there was a temporary one installed, and yeah, they'll be on the back of that and it'll be on a seascape.
Sounds good. So what have you been spending your cash on other than sunscreen?
Nothing this time. I did place an order for books some time ago. I think it was mid-February, and they actually landed the day after I flew out on holiday. So I only got those on the 1st of April. So they're the Kagero books on HMS Rodney, HMS Hood, Vanguard, Royal Oak, and Furious, I think.
Okay.
On Invincible as well. So yeah, that's the only thing. But I spent that weeks ago, so I've not spent anything as of yet.
Okay. In that case, moving on. Dan, what have you got on the bench?
On the bench is the bit different from me, the Tommy Shelby figure that I picked up at the Telford show, which is a last minute purchase. He's here. You can't really see him that great with the light, but I haven't 100% finished him. He still needs a coat of matte, because clothes are not supposed to be shiny unless it's leather, and his jacket is definitely fabric. So I need to get a matte coat on it, but I will use my Winsor & Newton Artists matte, because I know that that's safe, because we've all done it. You've put a nice coat of matte on a finished project and it's frosted or all gone wrong. So I know I'm safe with that. So that's good to do. And then I need to make a plinth for him. I've got a really nice wooden one, but the wood is very, very light, and the varnish on it's a bit, I think they sprayed it with a handful of dust in it, so that all needs sanding back and painting and making look nice. And then I will pin his foot and mount him onto the plinth. And armour wise, I've literally just finished today the little 1/48 scale M10 Achilles that I started building during the 48 and 48. And I got it all finished, painted, weathered, and last night I sat and painted all the little stowage bits and pieces, because all of the reference photos for these, they're covered in stowage boxes, wooden crates, bed rolls, all the rest of it. And I always think you've got to be careful, and this isn't a slight on anybody when they put stowage on a vehicle, but in the first instance, with bed rolls and stuff, particularly if they're cast in resin, if they've got a flat bottom on them, they need to be on a flat surface. You can't have something with a flat bottom hanging over, because if it's not rigid, it's made out of material, it should go over the side. And the other thing, which is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, is stowage that is not tied down, because if you're bumbling along on a tank and you've got wooden crates and boxes and stuff and there's nothing tying it down, then it's not going to last long on the back. So I used some sewing thread that was quite thick, but it was bright yellow because I believe it's used for denim. The missus raided the sewing box. So I've weathered that down with some Tamiya, good old Tamiya panel line accent colour, and that dulled it all right down. But you got to think about how you tie stuff off as well. So I used the light guards and the cast lifting lugs that were on the front and back to tie everything down. So yeah, really pleased with that. It's another 48 gem in my favourite scale for armour at the moment. So yeah, that's done. So I've got a clear bench.
And what have you been spending your cash on?
Not loads. Premium Hobbies had another one of their flash sales, because I believe they're still in the process of either selling off and moving to somewhere else. So I jumped on. Admittedly, there's not a lot of what I wanted in stock, but what they did have was the Mr. Super Metallic 2, which is one of my favourite lacquer metallic paints, and I managed to get all what was missing out of the collection. So I've got every colour of their super metallics now. I've completed the whole collection through the numbers, so I'm really, really happy with them. I saved a good chunk on the purchase cost of those. And the other thing I did get was from Liang Models, and it's their soft tow cables that I was using picture hanging wire for tow cables, but even that's got a steel core and it's a bit too springy when you're trying to sort of manipulate it to where you need it to go. This stuff is super soft. You have to be really careful with it that you don't dent it, but it's perfectly in scale for making tow cables, particularly in 48 scale. This is what I've discovered with 48 is, while there are millions and millions of accessories for 135th, the pickings are a little bit slimmer for 148, so you have to do a bit more research and shopping around. But
I can see Spencer taking notes on this. As he's started with his AFEs again.
Well, this comes in 1 meter, Spence, and this is the 0.6 millimeter diameter that I went for, which I think.
Where did you get that from?
That was, I think it was through eBay, but as usual, when you buy it, they give you a leaflet saying buy direct from us. So I can't remember.
How's that spelled?
It's Liang.
Aren't they the American distributors for a load of Japanese products? I seem to remember listening to one of the other pods and they had the owner of Liang on at the show.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of places on eBay that sell it. It's a pretty good price as well, isn't it?
Well, I mean, a meter is going to last a lot of 148 scale models.
Yeah, do they do different sizes?
Yeah, they do about 3 or 4 different sizes. Actually, they do more than that. They do quite a lot of different sizes. So, I mean, I thought, well, I'll just get this one and see what it's like. And now that I know what I'm getting for different, I see like the KV2, the big Russian KV2 that I've recently finished, the tow cables on those things are massive. They're super, super thick. So in a way, this is the wrong scale. You would need to go a bit bigger.
And is it similar to picture hanging wire, or is it more detailed than that?
No, it's a lot more detailed. The twist on it is more accurate to what a tow cable would be. Yeah, because the twist on picture hanging wire is a bit too open, so to speak.
Yeah.
But this is true. I know you can do it with a drill and brass wire and make your own, but for what it costs, this stuff's ready to go out of the packet.
No, I'm definitely going to hunt some of that down. That looks great. Yeah, that's a great recommendation.
Give it a go.
Okay, with that then, Nevs.
So I'm still cracking on with the 3 ships that I talked about a few episodes ago. So the Nassau, the Brandenburg, and the Scharnhorst. I've solved the little problem I had with Scharnhorst. That's the main one that's on my bench at the moment. Nassau's sort of had to fall by the wayside a little bit, and with the Flyhawk kit, they're definitely there for people that are genuine enthusiasts. If you didn't like the Scharnhorst, don't bother building it, because it'll go into every single binocular, davit, whatever it is on the battleship. So it's very enjoyable build, but it is taking a very long time. For instance, just the main tower on the Tamiya kit will be done in 6 parts, and this one's about 10 times that. So yeah, that's powering ahead with the Scharnhorst, because I do want to get it done for the club challenge in June. So yes, that is pretty much taking up my time at the moment.
Okay, and what have you been spending your cash on?
How long have you got?
Oh,
So
right.
well, to be fair to me, it's a few episodes since I last did my on the bench, but I did buy quite a few ships in the meantime. I finally got a hold of the ICM Kaiser's fleet before König-class battleships. I picked up a few of the SS model 3D printed ones, but to be honest, I'm not entirely impressed with those, because the resin hasn't quite cured. It's almost like it's been hit by a heat ray on its way over from China, so they'll take a bit of rescuing, really. But I got a couple of US cruisers, the Northampton and the Wichita, as well as USS Oklahoma, which was sunk at Pearl Harbor, and another German dreadnought. So I've got plenty to be cracking on with there. But like I say, this half of the year at least, it's very much German battleship focused and getting those built.
Okay. Anything else?
No. I've got some more orders on the way for the business. One order from Japan, one from Poland. So my house will become a warehouse even more. There's a few kits for myself in there, but only like 1 or 2 at most. But they'll be arriving in the next few days. Yes. Yeah, I like to import the Japanese manufacturers because A, you don't see that much of them in the UK, and B, when you do, it is massively overpriced. So a lot of the products I've had so far are ship-based, but in this big order that's coming, there's plenty more aircraft. So aircraft modelers can take note, particularly in 32nd and 72nds. There's a few jets, a few Second World War planes. So yeah, it'll be interesting, and it will all go up on the online web store as soon as they arrive.
And the address for that is?
pondstones.sumupstore.com.
Okay, with that, Shane.
Yeah, so I spent the last couple of weeks between episodes building bases, actually. So a base has been finished for the second P-51D, which will appear on our Facebook Benchmates page imminently. And then myself and Jacob, of my eldest son, have been building a base for an F-16, which we've been building over the last sort of couple of months together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I mentioned this before, but he wanted flares coming out for the F-16. So that's been quite a undertaking between the two of us with no arguments, actually, which is quite positive. So yeah, just been focusing on that. So the bench is pretty clear now, apart from the third Mustang, which appeared. And I have just started a master grade Gundam Death Scythe. I wasn't intending to start anything ahead of my imminent pre-orders, but couldn't resist. Looks a really cool model, so I can't wait to get this one a bit further ahead.
Okay. And what have you been spending your cash on then?
Guinness.
Right. What scale?
1-to-1, fortunately. No, I haven't spent any cash on models because of the pre-orders. I'm pretty confident that if I bought anything else at that moment, I would be in a lot of trouble with the wife. So I'm going to hold fire for now.
I think we're actually sharing a pre-order because I'm looking at something that's just arrived in the post from Aircraft.
Ah, very good.
Which is a detailed open-cowled Centaurus engine for the 132nd DBMK kit.
And that thing is absolutely incredible. We had a sneak peek at Telford.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable. Similar to like the Fish Cop side of things, where it's a complete engine. Yeah, fantastic. I can't wait to get that. And also, for those that aren't aware, there's a 2-seat conversion as well, which I'm also going to dabble in. because my father-in-law actually works on the real thing. So yeah, Spencer Flack's 2-seat Fury, he converted the brakes on the Sea Fury from drum to disc.
Right, okay, that was G Fury.
G Fury, yeah.
The one that sadly came down near Wellington on the approach with an engine failure.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes.
But there's a good story about that one, because he said that he remembers it to the day because he was under one of the wings, working away, changing the brakes, and it was the day that Elvis died.
Right. It's a way of remembering it. Well, hopefully by the time this episode drops, the DBMK Sea Fury should have actually been dispatched. On the back of the previous episode, number 26, where we announced what's coming next from DBMK, which obviously you guys were intently listening to. So, Spencer, what's been on your bench recently?
Well, apart from the Meteor, obviously. And now that that's gone, I've got a little tiny window in my schedule, work-wise, because I've actually worked in advance. I finished off the Meteor and the 48 scale Leopard 2A7, the new Tamiya kit, or newish Tamiya kit. So I'm returning back to the Legacy collection for 3 or 4 weeks, which is involving me building kits that are almost as old as I am for this collection. So currently on the bench is the Tamiya Stoke 4, which came out in, I don't know what, 74, 75, 76, something like that. So I'm putting that together at the moment. I've been working on that over the last couple of days. I broke a few parts off that today to make it look a bit more candid, damaged a few of the mud guards, that kind of thing. So it's, if anybody's followed the Legacy collection, it's just basically I'm building old kits using newer techniques, but in the style of dioramas that would have been built by Francois Verlinden back in the sort of late 70s, early 80s. So it's very much that kind of style. So it switches away from my current style of finishing back to a more kind of simplistic way of doing things. So I'm doing that at the moment.
Are you using modern paints, etc., or are you going back and going for the old enamels?
Yes, although with the first collection, because I did 2 Legacy books, so I effectively did 2 collections over lockdown, I was able to use some of the original paints because friends had original Humbrol authentic paints that they were prepared to share with me. So I did get to use those. But what I've tried to do is I've tried to match the colours as much as possible, which is not easy because Humbrol's formulation and also colours changed over time. They had distinctive colours that were used by him, French artillery green, khaki, German grey, those kind of colours. And although they appeared in the Humbrol range, those colours changed, and also the formulations changed as well. So I was spending time almost colour chipping original modelling paints rather than colour chipping actual paints used on real vehicles. So that's that. So the Stug is sat on my desk at the moment. It's about halfway through. Tomorrow I'm planning, whilst I'm listening to the football, to try and detail it. I want to replace all of the side skirts. I want to replace the machine gun shield on the upper hull, that kind of thing, add a few details in and around it. But whilst I'm doing that, I've also put together a collection of ultra rare Verlinden DCS plaster buildings. Now, the DCS range predated his MDA and Verlinden Productions buildings. Some of these date back to 1973, 74, and they are so rare now. They occasionally come up on eBay, but not very often. So I've managed to get a load of these, and I've managed to get 4 that appeared in his original book, the Verlinden Way Volume 1. He used 4 of these buildings in that book, and I've managed to get all 4 of them. So I paid an arm and a leg for them. They were probably a couple of quid when they first came out. They weren't once they hit eBay. They were a lot of money, but they were kind of worth having. So there is that. And then beyond that, I'm obviously looking at starting work on other things that are going to be done for work. Messerschmitt 109 G6, the Airfix, the big Airfix one, is one of those builds. And then I've got some private commissions that I'm going to be working on, which I can't really tell you about, but that I'm going to be working on through the next 6 months, all of which are in 30-second scale. So they are kind of big and involved and detailed and all that sort of stuff. But obviously I will reveal those when I can.
Understandable.
And the final one that was on my desk, but isn't on my desk anymore because I think it's trying to tell me something, is a Tamiya 1/20th scale Ferrari 312 T3, which is the 1979 Ferrari that came out, raced it during that season. Now, I've had 4 of these kits. Currently 2 sit in my workshop. I had one when I was 15, 16, something like that, which I bought, built, and sort of put on the shelf. Then I decided that I wanted to build another one as part of this legacy collection because Francois had built a diorama around this particular car. So I bought another one and stuffed up the paint job to such an extent that the kit ended up in the bin. And this is only going back a few years. So I got myself a replacement. And then I realized after I bought this replacement that the diorama that he built that I wanted to mimic needed 2 kits because there were 2 sets of wheels and tires. But obviously I'd then thrown out the kit that I could have used for the spares, which is a stupid thing to do. So I then had to buy another kit. So now I've got 2 of these. So I've had 4 of these 312 T kits. And so yesterday I thought, well, what I'll do after messing up the paint job for a few, I say months back, but it's probably over a year back, messed up the finish. I thought, what I'll do is I'll strip this down and I'll repaint it. So I tried doing that yesterday and I messed it up a 3rd time. So that was 3 times I've tried to paint a red model with white trim and I ballsed it up all 3 times. And so I got so mad with this thing yesterday. I went and sort of stormed off into the living room, slumped on the sofa while Elizabeth was watching the TV. She took one look at me and went, "That didn't go well, did it?" And I went, "No, and I don't want to talk about it." So currently the model is back in its box on the shelf and it's going to be painted a 4th time. I'm starting to think that this model is trying to tell me something because I cannot believe that something this simple is proving to be this challenging without there being an outside influence out there trying to tell me that maybe it's just not worth the hassle.
Is it worth trying a slightly different approach?
Oh, I've tried all that.
Oh.
I tried the zero paints with the 2K onto it. I tried zero paints with the standard lacquer. I tried Tamiya paints with their clear. I tried a matte finish covered in clear, and that just looked like I painted it with a yard broom. I don't know. I mean, I do way more complicated models in way more complicated colour schemes than this one, but for some reason I just can't seem to nail it. But I'm not going to admit defeat. At some point I'm going to paint this damn thing and get it looking the way that I want it to. I'm just not in the mood to do it at the moment. So this is one of those projects that I'm chalking up to it's a disaster and best ignored and sort of move on. It's driving me to the point of distraction now. So I think I'm better off just leaving it. Otherwise, it's going to be another kit that goes in the bin. And I don't really want to do that because it was quite an expensive purchase because these things are deleted and they're about 70 or 80 pounds to buy one of these kits now. So it's probably a bit too expensive for me to toss up the wall, but that's it. So yeah.
What do you use as stripper?
What did I use as stripper? I just soaked it in leveling thinners.
Okay.
In Mr. Colour. Because it was only 2 parts, it was essentially only 2 parts. It was only like, there's the lower chassis is one piece, and then you've got the upper monocoque, which is another piece. So I just put it into a Chinese rice box and just covered it and left it for a couple of minutes and then just washed it off. That might have been my problem. I was lying awake, as you do, maybe all modelers do this. I was lying awake at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking, so how was it that I made such a mess of this thing and what? But it could be that there's contaminants on the plastic for the cleaning process that I hadn't cleaned off properly. But I thought I'd done that enough, but I don't know. I've given up thinking about it, to be honest.
Having my nightmare with the Musaru Cup with that Toyota build where I had to strip the paint off and repaint it and finish it within 7 hours.
Yeah.
That wasn't fun.
No.
The MS Clean Slate.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
My thing is, I have the deepest of respect for people who can build cars well. Because it's such a different mindset. It's an incredible shift in skills to do gloss finishes. It's one of the reasons I love the idea of doing a large-scale hawk in the black finish or a red arrow or something in that gloss finish. But I'm completely put off by the idea of it being a glossy kind of finish. Now, I'm not suggesting that a 32nd scale Hawk should have 2K clear all over it and it look like a racing car. But if I'm going to make a mess of something, it's going to be a gloss. Oh, it's just, my career in modelling is littered with cocked up gloss finishes. If there's anything that's going to get under my skin, it's doing something like that. So, I tend to avoid them really as much as is humanly possible.
Gotcha. Perhaps some of our benchmates can give us a little bit of advice on how to get the perfect gloss finish, both for aircraft and for vehicles.
Yeah, indeed.
I know I'm no expert on vehicles, and having built a car now, that's the last car I'm going to be touching for a very long time, if at all ever again.
Yeah, the slightly disturbing thing is my next build for Marcus for Tamiya magazine is the new Honda Prelude.
Oh dear.
So which means that there is literally zero room for error on that, and I have to get that finish right. But I'm hoping that I don't know.
Try the SMS range of automotive paints.
Yeah, I might do. Or I might just say to him, look, I'm too much of a coward. Can you get somebody else to do it? No, I don't know. It'll get done. I think I'm very much of the opinion, as a model maker, as an artist, or anything that comes with that, is sometimes your brain subconsciously admits defeat before you even do something.
Yeah.
And I think in this case, because it's gone wrong so often, my brain has now switched off, and it's now saying to me, you're not going to be able to do this. You can't do this. So I've already gone down that path of defeat before I do it. So whereas if I constantly tell myself it'd be fine, I'll get it done, I might rewire that part of my brain, but I think it'll be fine. I think this car will be fine. But the T3, I don't know what to do about that. I don't know. Maybe I'll get it done this week and post the pictures, and you'll all remind me that I've had this conversation.
Oh, we will, don't you worry. Most definitely.
Yes.
Okay then, so recent builds, you have done the Revell 132nd Meteor.
Yes.
How was it?
If I'd finished it last year, because I think I was given it somewhere in around about October, end of September, October, sometime like that. And I'd finished it before Christmas, it would have been my kit of the year for last year. As it stands, unless something shifts my attention, it will be kit of the year for this year. And we are only in April.
Yeah.
It's a spectacular piece of work and an almost unbelievable shift in quality, approach, and buildability. I put that in inverted commas, buildability from Revell. I can't think of another kit that Revell have created throughout their entire history that is this good in terms of its approach, the features it includes, the detail that they've incorporated, the way it goes together, its general design ethos, the instructions, the decals, everything about it is a leap above where they've been before. It's not to suggest that they haven't created good kits in the past, but nothing on this level. Absolutely nothing. It's, I think, which in some regards, I'm hoping I'm wrong, but it could be a slight double-edged sword for Revell, because once you've created something that's at that level, you've kind of got to follow it with something else. You're only judged on what went before. As model makers, myself, I'm only judged on what I built last time. I'm not judged on what I build next time. If what I build next time is worse, people are going to think I've switched off. If Revell were to create another 32nd scale kit that dropped below what they've created with the Meteor, then people are going to start to question whether it was just a flash in the pan. And I hope that's not the case, because it is spectacular.
Well, the Hunter that's coming out, the nose section and the pieces you need to make the T7 have been done by the same designer as the Meteor.
Yeah.
But he has reverse engineered the original kit from 28 years ago. So the nose section matches in detail to the rest of the kit, rather than going to the same detail level as the Meteor on the forward fuselage. Otherwise, it would just look odd.
It would look odd, yeah. It would. Absolutely.
You know, you're matching up with something from 28 years ago. Yes, it was different techniques, it was different structure, etc., etc. But I think the guy's done a fantastic job in trying to match up to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the detail. I remember the first time I saw the models built up would have been the Avon show. Was the first time I'd seen, I think they had two of them built up. There was the FR9 and the F8 were side by side. And I remember looking at them. I think Luke was there and looking at the surface detail. I was really kind of taken by the complexity of it. Which is fine, because, you know, obviously see something like that and you see the improvement in detail. None of that would have mattered if the model had been difficult to put together. But I think the trick that Revell has pulled off with this kit is it's almost eye-wateringly simple to assemble, despite the fact that it's got a massive amount of parts. It's a hugely complex kit.
Yeah.
There are a few areas, I think, which I would have liked to have seen improved. There's no doubt about that. Some of the parts around the engine, for instance, had rather more in the way of sprue attachment points that needed to be cleaned up than I would have liked. That's the kind of thing where you would have seen maybe a slightly different approach had that kit been in a Tamiya box, for instance. They would have maybe approached that slightly different. It seemed in some cases it was a little bit more heavy-handed than I would have liked. But those areas are few and far between when you compare it to the rest of the kit. And there was so little in the way of actual cleanup when it came to the components for the airframe that I didn't use a single bit of filler on the entire model. And I include Mr. Surfacer in that as well. I didn't use anything, I don't think. No, I didn't. I didn't use anything. I'm thinking whether or not I did on the wing roots, just to fill a few hairline cracks there, but I don't think I even did on that. Everything fell onto a panel line, so although I had to sand, you have to sand joints, you're sanding them over the top of the fuselage, around wing joints and that kind of thing, everything else just dropped into place. And I was able to then confidently build it and paint it, knowing that I didn't have to clean kind of areas up. It was quite an extraordinary sort of thing to put together. Also, there were areas as well. We talk about the cockpit. I mean, you know that I use the Ask seat in the kit. Last time I was on, I think we talked about the seat, and I ordered one the very next day.
Yes.
In fact, I think I ordered one that night after I came off here. And I kind of thought, well, what I'll do is, while I'm waiting for the seat, I'll add some details inside the cockpit along the sidewalls. And then I sort of put everything together. I enclosed it all just to see how it was, and then dropped the kit seat in. I thought, I'm not going to see any of that. What's the point? The detail that's in there is comprehensive enough for you to be able to kind of work around that with the seat. Once you get the canopy in place, you've got everything else in place, everything will look as comprehensive as it needs to be. And I found that was the case with everything else as well. There was just enough. So I detailed the engine. I added quite a bit of detail in and around the engine.
Yeah.
But I didn't go overboard with anything else. Didn't detail the undercarriage bays. Didn't really add too much in there. I left those kind of things alone. And frankly, I didn't think once it was at the point where I needed to paint it, there wasn't really any need to do that. There have been some, obviously, comments were made. I've had comments made on my Facebook page that it was an expensive initial release. 120 quid or whatever it was. I don't know. I didn't have a full spec kit.
Yeah.
Luke sent me the plastic parts in a big bag. I got a bag of parts, and I got a PDF sent through to me for the instructions, which I then had to print off. And I got a set of Decals mass and the small Edward etch fret, which I'm assuming there's going to be sold separately, I would think, at some point.
Yes.
So I had that, but they came at me at different times, which is one of the reasons why I didn't start the kit straight away. And I get that, £120 is a lot of money, but when you start factoring in bits and pieces and factoring also in the book that came, which I've not seen, I don't know what the book's like. I'm assuming it follows a similar format to the other books in the range.
Yes.
It makes sense, but then they're going to release a new version, which I think is going to have, instead of all of the decal schemes, they're going to only have 4 or 3.
3 or 4, yeah.
So you'll have all of that, but you won't have the book, you won't have the masks, you won't have any of the other bits and pieces. It'll just be it'll be a stock plastic kit, and that'll be, let's say, I don't know, 75, 80 pounds. Probably by the time that some money's been taken off, it'll be slightly less than that.
I believe it's due to retail at 80, and there's no FR9 components in this kit.
Oh, okay.
You're right, the masks are missing, the book's missing, the photo etch fret is missing.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit out of it. But when you think about how much you would spend for all those components separately.
Yeah.
When you look at £80 for the base kit, which you're still getting one hell of a kit for it. And when you actually compare it to something like a Qatari Spit.
Yeah.
It means you're slightly bigger.
Yeah.
So your value for money wise, at 80 quid, you're actually getting a bargain. I know they actually sound it to a lot of people and thinking you're talking out of your derriere. They've knocked it out of the ballpark with this one.
Yeah.
I haven't read anywhere any detrimental comments for fit or for accuracy anywhere. When was the last time you heard of a kit coming out that had 0 negative comments?
And it looks bang on as well. When you have it complete, when I had it sat on my desk, one of the things that I tend to look for in a kit is how it sits. Over the years, that's been quite important. When I've been building Harriers, for instance, the amount of times that I'll see a Harrier model that's been built where it sits nose up, that doesn't look like it's got any weight sat on its front undercarriage leg. Whereas Harriers, especially when they're loaded, the kind of the yoke on the front undercarriage leg is almost at 90 degrees to the leg. Whereas often you see it at an angle and it looks like it's on tiptoes. So that's kind of important to me. And when I had the model sat on my desk, I was looking at it thinking, yeah, it looks heavy. It looks like they've spent a lot of time looking at the way that the angles of the undercarriage, everything looks right. So it was a very pleasing model to put together. I made my life slightly difficult in the end because I didn't want to do any of the kit color schemes, but that's down to me. That's not down to the choices that Revell made. It's just that I have this thing about building what everybody else has built, and I'd already seen that other modelers had built the model in the color schemes from the kit, so I looked for something different. And the way I did that was that I still built a 208 Squadron aircraft, but I didn't build the one that was in the kit, in the camouflage in the kit. I built one from Halfar, which has got the Dayfighter scheme, which I really liked. What was difficult about that was trying to then get hold of the codes, because extra decals codes, they didn't seem to have any. So I was like rooting around in my spare decal bank to try and find the codes for that aircraft. Eventually I found what I needed pretty much. So I had everything that I needed. And then I had to match the paints. The slate grey that's part of that colour scheme was a particular one where I was like, what colours, how does that work then? And I think that, I can't remember how I did it. I found a pot of Humbrol 31, which is slate grey. And so I matched it to that. And I think the colour that I used was either field grey, or I think it might have been Tamiya field grey was the colour that I used. And then I put the yellow-green colour that they do to lighten it down and reduce it down. And I got a colour that was very close to the Humbrol colour. So that was a slight difficulty, and then kind of masking them. I mean, the shape of that camouflage pattern around the engine nacelles and all of that kind of thing is kind of tricky. But by the end of it, I had a model I was really happy with, and it's still it's in my workshop at the moment. I was really delighted with the way it came out. And it's one of the few kits that I built recently where I thought, yeah, I'd build another one of those. I'd put another one of those together. You know, and you're not short of colour schemes, are you? So,
oh no.
And if I could just quickly, before I stop talking about this model, it is just to say to the decal manufacturers, please, can we have some decals for this thing? You know, you've got dozens of choices. It's about time that we had some decals.
Royal Auxiliary Air Force sheets for our frontline squadron, the second line squadron, target tug units. There's so many options. Just look at the wing leader book on the Meteor F8 and you will be spoilt for choice, literally.
Yeah, there's just absolutely loads, aren't there?
Yeah.
Just going through those. So yeah, very impressive, very impressed, and a really, really enjoyable project to put together. Yeah, I'm looking forward to people seeing it. Hopefully I'll be able to take it out to shows and stuff and people will be able to see it. I think that.
I look forward to seeing it. And is there going to be a book?
There is going to be a book. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, there is going to be a book. I've actually got 2 Meteors that are built at the moment. I've got the Revell one. Obviously, the article is appearing in Model Airplane, but what I'm going to do is it'll all be collated together in one go. But it'll be run alongside the Airfix Meteor F8 that I did, and I'm also part way through the little Airfix 72nd scale Meteor, which I've got a set of extra decals for. I haven't decided on a colour scheme for that yet. I'm thinking maybe a silver one, don't really know, maybe do one of those. I'm not so sure, because the F8 that I did was basically the scheme that's in the Airfix 48 scale kit, but it's the silver version of it. The box art is in camouflage with day glow. I did the silver variant of that same aircraft, but there's lots of different color schemes in that. So I'm going to put that together. So the book will be essentially 3 builds, 32nd, 48th and 72nd scale of 2 F8s, 1 FR9, and it'll follow a similar format to the other nonsense that I create for these books. So it'll just be like a builder's.
And they're far from nonsense. They're absolutely superb. They really are.
Well, thank you for that. The books are, they're very much, they're not for the tyro, really. They're not for the kind of person who's looking for a warts and all technical guide to building models of meteors or Harriers or whatever else nonsense. They're there for model makers they're there to inspire other model makers to maybe have a crack at building something like that. So I like to keep things as simple as possible. And, I like to use readily available materials, easy to follow techniques, that kind of thing. If I add details, I make sure that they're either simple to add or you can buy them online, you can buy them from the aftermarket, that kind of thing. And then at the end of the process, you get something, hopefully, that you can put in your display case that you enjoy. So that I try and cover as many bases as I can with these books, really, and try and make them as... You remember when we were younger, Brownie? You remember those days?
Yes.
When we weren't the middle-aged grey guys that we are now. Back in the day of having old Airfix magazine, scale aircraft modelling, scale models and everything, when we'd get that magazine in the middle of the month or something, we'd open it up and somebody had built something and you'd look at it and go, oh, that's cool. It's the cool factor rather than I'm a little bit of a believer that I think model making is like stratospherically technical a lot of the time. And I think there's an awful lot of, look how great I am, look how great this model is. And I think for the vast majority of model makers out there, that can be intimidating, actually. As that can be intimidating instead of being inspiring. It's kind of like looking at a really high-end figure on a box art, something, and you look at it and you go, yeah, that's brilliant. Could I do that? I'm not sure I could. And sometimes that can be a bit of an off-put, and it shouldn't be. And I'm not suggesting, before anybody writes in or, I get brickbats thrown at me, I'm not suggesting that the models on box art shouldn't be brilliant. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that my approach is to try and take it down a notch or two so that it creates something that's a bit more approachable, in the same way that if somebody comes up to me at a model show and says, hey Spence, I like your model, can you show me how to do it? It's about the simplicity of it. It's about the simple kind of way I approach it rather than anything else. So that's the book in a nutshell. Yeah.
Beyond the Box Art is brought to you by Ammo by Mig Jimenez, Fishcom Model Company, Guideline Publications, Phase Hanger Resin Accessories, and the Scale Modelers Supply. Here comes the Stash Inflation Report, separating genuine must-haves from, well, it was on pre-order anyway.
Right then, Benchmates, it's time once again to pry open the wallet, ignore the increasingly panicked look from the banking app, and dive headfirst into the latest Stash Inflation Report. And we're kicking off this time with a proper spread of new releases, limited editions, prototypes, and enough Spitfire development history to keep the rivet counters very happy indeed. First up, Hobby 2000 have a pair of 132nd Heinkel 162 Volksjägers inbound. There's an A1 boxing which pairs Revell's plastic with cartograph decals, masks and a resin cannon, while the A2 gives you a very similar package just without the resin cannon. So if late war jets with a slightly desperate edge are your thing, there's plenty to like here. And before you all start to say I got the name wrong, Salamander, which is often associated with this aircraft, was the code name for the wing construction program only, and not the aircraft itself. Over at IBG, things get especially interesting for Spitfire fans because they're going right back to the beginning with the prototype K5054 in 1/72nd scale. One kit covers the Type 300 prototype in first flight form, complete with a test pilot figure and a mix of injection moulded and 3D printed parts. There's a second release covering K5044 during the later test program, taking in stages 2, 3 and 4. So if you fancy charting the development of one of aviation's greats rather than just building yet another line fighter, that's a very classy way to do it. RS Models keeps things brief but nicely unusual with a 1/72nd scale KI 106, which is very much one for those who like their Japanese subjects a little further off the beaten track. Now then, Edward haven't exactly turned up with a shy modest offering this month. First there's the 148th Hornet Legacy Limited Edition, and this one comes with a bit of urgency attached. Edward say it's available only while supplies last, with just 2,300 units planned. So it may well become one of those releases that mysteriously vanishes just before payday. Inside the box, you're getting kinetic plastic, 8 marking options, Eduard decals, pre-painted photo etch, masks, plus resin wheels and a resin seat with the belts moulded in. In other words, very much a go on, treat yourself sort of package. For the 172nd crowd, there's the Messerschmitt BF110F Profi Pack. Officially, it's listed as a June release, but the word is it's expected to land in late May. This is all Eduard plastic with 5 marking options, Eduard decals, pre-painted photo etch and a matte painting mask. This is all Eduard plastic with 5 marking options, Eduard decals, pre-painted photo etch and a painting mask. No resin in this boxing, but it's still a very tidy package. Also on the way is the 172nd Supermarine Spitfire 5B Mid, listed as a May release but expected in late April. So Spitfire builders may not have long to wait at all, and if you want to know what the box art looks like, have a look at our art for episode 25 when we actually had Vladimir and Jakob from Eduard as our guests. So, moving on to 148 scale, there's the Mitsubishi A6 M2-K Weekend Edition. That's the 2-seat Trainer Zero. Again, it's officially a May release, but expected late April. You get 4 marking options and Eduard decals, but being a weekend edition, there's no photo etch, no masks and no resin, just plastic decals and the quiet expectation that you know what you're doing. And then we come to the big bruiser of the batch, the 148th Curtis P40K Warhawk Dual Combo in Royal Class. This is another May release, and it includes parts for 2 complete kits, letting you build a pair of short-tail P40Ks in United States Army Air Force, Royal Air Force and South African Air Force schemes. In the box you get 8 marking options, Eduard decals, pre-painted photo etch, masks and a healthy helping of resin, including exhausts, 2 sets of wheels, and seats with harnesses. There's also O-mask wheel well plugs, and because this is Royal Class, yes, there's even a mouse pad in the box, which is either delightfully eccentric or a sign that Eduard are now packaging these things for people who never leave the workbench. If airliners are more your thing, X-Scale have something a little different with 144th Boeing 737-200 in Delta Airlines colours, complete with 3D printed engine fan blades. Over at Special Hobby, there's a really varied lineup this time. First in 148th is the Caproni CA312 Italian export bomber, a fascinating light twin that began life as an export proposal for Belgium and Norway, only for those orders to evaporate and the aircraft to end up in Italian service instead. Some even operated as white-painted ambulances on the Eastern Front, complete with red crosses. The kit itself is classic Special Hobby, mixed media territory with 3D printed parts, resin and photo etch covering areas such as the engines, cowlings, undercarriage components and interior. Markings include the Norwegian prototype with the smooth nose, plus 3 Italian step nose aircraft, including that very striking white ambulance machine from the Caucasus. Then in 172nd scale there's the AT-6 Texan Little Warrior. Yes, we all know the Texan as a trainer, but this boxing leans into its very real combat record, from Korea to colonial and counterinsurgency conflicts, and service across a long list of post-war air arms. This release uses Academy's AT-6 mouldings, but adds new tooled injection canopies for multiple versions, along with 3D printed resin and etched parts, particularly around the undercarriage. Markings include 2 US Air Force aircraft from Korea, a French aircraft from Algeria with a rather eye-catching painted beast mouth, and a wing-gunned Spanish Texan, a Syrian machine, and an Israeli Air Force Harvard. Also from Special Hobby, there's the 172nd Curtis TP40N Warhawk covering the 2-seat trainer variant, which is another nice left-field choice for those who enjoy the unusual corners of familiar aircraft families. And one final note for 172nd, Tempest fans, Special Hobby are working on an entire family of Tempest kits, including the Mark II, 5 and 6. So if that all comes together as planned, it looks like we'll be getting the key variants in one consistent scale, which is no bad thing at all. And yes, plenty going on in aviation, from the Spitfire prototype and Luft 46 oddballs, right through to the Warhawks, Texans, Tempests and even a Delta airliner for good measure. But before I do any more financial damage on behalf of our benchmates, let's taxi off the runway and head for the muddy stuff, because Dan's been rummaging through the armour releases, and as ever, there are track vehicles, big guns, and probably something with far too many road wheels. Dan, over to you.
Thanks, Brownie. While you've been keeping the benchmates in order, I've been rummaging through the latest armour announcement to see what's rolling off the production lines. First up, and this one is absolutely enormous. I Love Kit are releasing the M1074 HEMTT PLS with M1076 trailer in 1/35 scale. If you like your military vehicles big, complicated and requiring an extension to the display cabinet, this is definitely one to look at. The palletized load system was designed by Oshkosh and entered US Army service in the 1990s, seeking action in Bosnia, Kosovo, Afghanistan and Iraq. The kit itself is packed to the rafters with over 1,000 parts spread across 26 sprues, plus rubber tyres, clear parts, photo etch and even brass wire. You get a full drivetrain with the engine, transmission and suspension, detailed cab interior masks for the windows and lights, and enough parts to keep you busy until at least next Christmas. At over 1/2 metre long once built, this thing is going to dominate the shelf. It comes in at around $155 straight from HobbyLink Japan, which sounds steep until you realise you are effectively getting half the US Army logistics chain in one box. From giant American logistics trucks to something much more British, Gecko models are continuing their run of wartime lorries with the British GS truck 3000 weight 4x2 Bedford OXD with metal cargo body in 1/35 scale. Now this is very much the sort of vehicle that quietly did the hard work in the background during the Second World War, hauling troops, supplies and just about anything else that needed shifting. This new release gives you the later closed cab version rather than the earlier open cab truck, and there's a choice between an open cargo body with steel sides or a canvas covered version. The kit also includes photo etch, detailed interior parts, separate doors that can be posed open or closed, and a nicely detailed 6-cylinder petrol engine under the bonnet. There are 4 marking options included, all in glorious shades of wartime khaki, plus a collection of jerry cans and flimsies for anyone who likes cluttering up their dioramas with all the things soldiers inevitably had to carry around. Lanmo model are also expanding their Italian armour range in May with a trio of releases based around the little L640 light tank. We are getting the standard L640, the prototype M6 version, and a dedicated interior set for the whole series. These should be very useful for fans of early war Italian armour because the L640 is one of those vehicles that often gets overlooked despite turning up all over North Africa, the Balkans and even the Eastern Front. The addition of a separate interior set should also be good news for anyone who likes leaving hatches open and showing off all the work they've put inside. Finally, 4Art have announced a few new kits while based on the former Dragon molds, still offer decent value for money. First up is the Israeli M113 personnel carrier from 1973 in 1/35 scale at just under £25. There is also the M247 MIM Hawk mobile missile launcher at around £35, plus a separate MIM Hawk missile launcher kit at just under £16. These are sensible prices in today's market and could be a good way for modelers to pick up some interesting Cold War and Middle Eastern subjects without completely destroying the modelling budget for the month. Right, that's enough armour from me. I'm now handing over to Nevs, who's probably already loitering around the port gates, seeing what's just arrived off of the boat.
Thanks, Dan. While you've been tracking armour across the battlefield, I've once again been waiting by the port to see what's arriving for us, naval model. For Jimmy are continuing their run of full-hull Japanese heavy cruisers, with the legendary Mogami arriving in 1/700 scale. This is the Mogami as she appeared at the peak of her naval power, carrying 10 8-inch guns in 5 turrets, before she was later converted into an aircraft-carrying cruiser. Following on from the Suzuya and Kumano, this will be another full-hull release, with plenty of new parts added to the existing tooling. For Imperial Japanese Navy fans, this is going to be a very tempting release, and it is expected to hit stockists from July. Sticking with the Japanese Navy, Triumph Model have announced their next big 1/700 release, with the battleship Nagata as she appeared in 1944. Now, Triumph are not doing this by halves. because Gato is coming in not 1, not 2, but 3 different boxings. There will be a standard edition, a deluxe edition with extra detailed parts, and even a beginner-friendly version designed to make life easier for anyone wanting to dip a toe into naval modelling. It is genuinely great to see a manufacturer thinking about bringing new builders into the hobby, rather than assuming everyone already owns a small mountain of photo etch and superglue. These will be resin 3D printed kits, available as both waterline and full hull versions. There is no firm release day yet, but looks as though Triumph may be aiming for the anniversary of the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which would be a very fitting time for Nagato to arrive. Meanwhile, Starling Models have cast their net wide with a raft of new announcements. In 1:350 scale, they are releasing the Royal Navy Monitor HMS M33 as a full hull kit, while in the 1:700 waterline range, we are getting a coastal tanker, the Q-class destroyer, an R-class destroyer, plus the battle-class destroyers HMS Ain and HMS Barfleur. This is really good to see some of the smaller Royal Navy subjects getting a bit of attention, because we never seem to get enough late war British destroyers in kit form. I will definitely be picking up Ain and Barfleur, although I am still waiting for Starling to spread the love a little further and give us some German, Italian, or frankly any other Navy destroyers that do not fly the white ensign. Pitt Road are also releasing something for fans of Japanese carrier decks, with their new IGN aircraft Set 10 in 1:700 scale. Inside the box you get Nakajima Kate torpedo bombers, Aichi Val dive bombers, Yokosuka D4Y dive bombers, Nakajima Mert reconnaissance aircraft in both day and night versions, Nakajima George interceptors in 1K1 and M1K2 form, plus Kyushu Q1W twin engine patrol aircraft. Now, I know I am straying dangerously close to Boulder's territory here, talking about aircraft, but these should be very nicely detailed little models and perfect for bringing carrier decks and dioramas to life. And if you thought detailing up a ship could not get any more extreme, Pontos are releasing an upgrade set for the Trumpeter 1/200th USS Fletcher, which promises to turn that already impressive kit into something completely unrecognisable. You get 5 sheets of photo etch, 1 sheet of decals, and 150 3D printed parts, covering everything from funnels and lifeboats to radar arrays and main gun turrets. This is very much not a cheap add-on, and you are probably looking at spending twice what you already paid for the original kit. But if you are a serious Fletcher class fan and fancy a project that will test your eyesight, your patience, and possibly your marriage, then this could be one for you. Finally, for a brand we have not mentioned much on the show so far, Sverna are releasing a 1:700 scale People's Liberation Army Navy Type 054B Kanzu frigate. This looks to be a full hull injection moulded kit with a special limited edition boxing that adds 3D printed upgrades, 2 sheets of photo etch, turned gun barrels, a metal nameplate, and a deck painting mask. If modern Chinese naval subjects are your thing, this is definitely one to keep an eye on. Right, I'm off to stop loitering around the dockyard before somebody asks me to chip paint on a real destroyer. Shane has been working in the future again, surrounded by giant robots, impossible colour schemes, and enough optional parts to fill a small warehouse. Over to you, Shane.
And after Nevs has finished loitering around the dock gates and trying to commission a 1/350th scale tugboat, we head into the world of Gundam, mecha, and things that have more articulation than most of us after a day at the beach. First up, Bandai's new 30-minute missions 1/4 scale, third and over. This one has a really sleek, almost aircraft-inspired look about it, which makes it stand out from some of the chunkier releases. Like the rest of the range, it uses the universal joint system. So if you enjoy swapping parts around and creating something totally unique, you're going to have a field day. In the box, you get dual rifles, shields, replacement head parts, and a selection of multi-joints, so you can attach weapons to the backpack or other hardpoints. At around £15 and due to arrive in April, it looks like a very tempting project that could easily spiral into buying the rest of the range. If fantasy is more your thing, Bandai also have the 30-minute fantasy Necros Knight arriving in June. At around £25, this is very much your classic Death Knight look. Dark armour, evil vibes, and a giant scythe. The clever part is that it uses the same silhouette body as the Libra Knight, so there's loads of scope for kit bashing and customising if you want to create your own fantasy warrior. For Gundam fans, there's an announcement that you definitely want to keep your eye on. Bauer Q models are producing an upscaled version of the RG Xeon in 1/100 scale, taking everything people liked about the smaller, real grade release and blowing it up to a much more display-friendly size. No price yet, but given how impressive the original kit was, I suspect quite a few wallets are already nervously hiding behind the sofa. And for those of you that like their mecha with a bit more weight on them, literally, Tron Model have announced their 1/72nd Schwarzritter action figure from the Iron Saga universe. This thing sounds absolutely bonkers. It has a full alloy metal skeleton combined with POM and ABS plastics, multiple metallic paints finishes, and 8 separate coloured divisions to give the armour a real contrast and texture. It's due in April and comes in at around £100, which is not exactly pocket money, but it does sound like the sort of thing that will make people stop in front of the cabinet and say, "Good grief, what on earth is that?" And finally, if you missed out on some of the more desirable Gundam kits first time round, well, P-Band have got us covered. They're reissuing several favourites from July onwards that include the MG Gundam Tallgeese 3, MG Gundam Heavy Arms Custom from the Endless Waltz, and the MG Gundam Ultron, also from the Endless Waltz. So if you have been regretting not buying one of those when you had the chance, a bit like me, prepare for that familiar sound of your bank card quietly weeping. And that wraps up the edit of the Stash Inflation Report. Aviation, armour, ships, Gundam, and enough upcoming releases to fill your shelves, cupboards, and probably a spare room or two. Now, before your stash gets any bigger, it's time to hear from Scott at SMS.
Are you looking for top quality paints for your next project? Then look no further than the Scale Modeler Supply. Hi, I'm Scott, and as a passionate modeler myself, I've spent years creating the SMS product range, designing them specifically with a scale modeler in mind. We've worked extensively to develop our acrylic lacquer paint range to not only be airbrush ready straight out of the bottle, but also to be very easy to use so that anyone of any skill level can create professional results with minimal effort. Just give the bottle a good shake, pour into your airbrush and spray at 15 psi. So dive into your next project with confidence, knowing that you're backed by one of the finest hobby paints on the market. Head over to our website scalemodeler.com.au to check out our full range and to find your closest retailer.
It's time for the IPMS Dispatches, your regular spotlight on events, branches, and SIGs.
So, time for another IPMS spotlight on the branches, and this time we are going to IPMS Middleton Cheney with Sam Evans, the chairperson. Welcome.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome, and the first and most obvious question that most people will be asking is, where the hell is Middleton Cheney?
Yes, that is the common question that we get asked. We are a few miles outside of Banbury, so Oxfordshire, Northamptonshire border.
Gotcha. Okay, and have you got much of a geographic spread for members, or are they relatively local to you?
Relatively local. We've got sort of 10-mile radius for members. We do have some members that are a bit further afield, down in sort of Bristol area, and we are twinned with a club in America.
Okay, which club's that?
It's a club in New Jersey.
Okay.
They're a small club as well, but we actually met their chairman at Scale Model World 2016.
Mm-hmm.
That was our first year that we did Scale Model World, and we met a lovely chap called John, and we sort of hit it off quite well and twinned with their club.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm just thinking, you saying that, I haven't heard of many branches actually being twinned with overseas organisations. I wonder if there's many more out there.
I don't know. It was just something that kind of happened so naturally for us because we'd like to be sort of we go against the norm, which the further we get into this, you'll realise is very true.
I'm slightly worried what questions I'm going to ask next now. On the back of that, okay, well, if there are any branches out there, and you don't have to be a UK branch that are twinned with other IPMS branches outside of your own country, please just drop us an email at info@beyondtheboxart.com and let's get you on and have a chat about you and see if we can get both sides of the twinning onto the show at the same time, which I think would be an interesting experiment. But okay, moving forward then, Sam, looking, and no disrespect in any way, shape, size or form, but for a branch chair, you seem incredibly young. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 35. So the club has been running since 2005, and I was there from the beginning. So I was there from young me to now, and it just became a natural progression. So again, with 2016, we did a year-long Star Trek display. And I stepped up to be the club secretary because it was kind of my models that were on display the most. So I then kind of progressed, and then 2019 I became the chairman, and here we are today. I've survived the club going through a lockdown, and yeah, we're still going strongly.
Right, you were talking about your history and Star Trek, which personally I'm a fan of. What were your themes after that?
So Star Trek was our first proper theme that we've done as a club. We've done displays featuring TV movie models, but Star Trek was the first year-long display. So every show we did, we was dressed up as Star Trek characters. We took all the models out. It was all the ships from different fleets and everything. Then we did a bar, which was interesting because it was bottles of beer, any form of alcohol that was related to a model. So we had, your obvious Spitfire ale. There's Silverstone, which is local to us, and there's a lot of Silverstone ales out there. So we had race cars. In New Zealand at the time, you used to be able to get Hobbit-related alcohol as well.
Yes, I've been there. I've been to the pub.
Perfect. So yeah, we had a couple of Lord of the Rings and Hobbit-related models. And yeah, we took that to Scale Model World and had fun with it.
Okay, did you require a license to have a bar at the show?
Luckily, no, because we wasn't serving it. But we did have pumps that were from a pub, so
right,
we could have hooked them up if we wanted to.
I bet there was a hell of a lot of disappointed people.
There was.
Oh, dear. Okay, carry on.
After that, we did, again, sort of specifically for the Scale Model World, we did a video game display where it was majoritively 3D printed models for this one, but we had all different video game characters, and we had the box art next to the models so people could see where the models came from. And that one was interesting purely because it was surprising how many people grew up with the games that we had on display. We had Mario, we had Sonic, we had more modern games like Halo. And yeah, that went down really well. So I should say now, the reason why I'm saying all of these ones is because Star Trek, we won the gold best club display at Scale Model World. We won a bronze with the bar, and we won a gold with the video games.
You're doing well, aren't you?
For a small village club that averages around 10 to 15 members per meeting, we're punching above our weight, definitely.
Nothing wrong with that.
No. And then that leads us to this year's theme.
I hate to ask.
We have called it Breaking the Mold Tour 2026, which gives nothing away at all.
I was going to say.
Yeah. So what we are doing is a music theme.
Okay.
People that have been to model shows and Scale Model World will already be thinking a music theme's been done. They've had models of records with, like, say, Enola Gay flying above it, which is true, which is why we're doing the actual bands and artists on display. So I've 3D printed loads of different bands and artists, from the Beatles to Chuck Berry to Elvis. We've got Frank Sinatra, and then we've got more modern artists like Sabrina Carpenter, Taylor Swift, and kind of everything in between. And we've built a 3/4 foot stage where a band or artist will be on it at every show that we do. Light Circus got sound reactive lights. We play the music, and we just go out there and have fun with it. And the reception that we've had so far is really positive because, again, it's something completely different, which is why it's called Breaking the Mold. You go to a normal model show and it's mostly military models, which is fine. That's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to just be so different and show that there is a different aspect of model making out there that's not just the norm. We've taken a subject that people love, because everybody loves music in one way, shape or form.
Yep.
And we've printed bands and artists with instruments and drum kits and all of the stuff that goes with it. And we're taking it on tour up and down the country.
Wow. Well, one thing you're going to have to do is send us a picture of how it looks at the moment. So when this drops, the members can actually have a look on the website or on the socials to actually see what you're talking about, because it sounds impressive as hell.
Of course, yeah. It's one of those ideas that came about so quickly and naturally for us.
Were you in a pub when you came up with this idea, out of curiosity?
No. It's an interesting story how I came up about it, which involves a lot of queuing.
Okay.
I went to see Sabrina Carpenter when she did her Hyde Park tour show in 2025. And I was bored waiting in the queue. So I was literally looking at STL files of bands and artists to print, of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
It went from there. So I put it forward to the club because we already had a theme planned for this year.
Yeah.
It was completely different. But I put it forward to the club and they ran with it even further. So we're now, I think, 4 or 5 shows into this year's tour, and we've still got a lot of bands and artists to come, which is insane. And so the whole thing came about because I was bored in a queue and I like music.
Okay. Well, there's nothing wrong with either of that for the hobby in any way, shape, size or form. But okay, going back a little bit then. So the branches at Middleton Cheney, where do you meet?
So we meet in the library, which is on the main road. Postcode is Oscar X-Ray 17 to Papa Delta. We meet once a month, which is every third Thursday of the month, starting at 7 p.m. And we try and build a few models, but it's mostly drinking coffee, eating cake, talking about models mainly. And then every other month we'll have an in-house competition. At the end of the year, the winner of it will be awarded a nice trophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I must admit, most branches seem to hold their events in social clubs. Being in a library is novel. Do you actually get told to shush when you're actually having a conversation?
No, so luckily for us, the library's empty when we go in.
Right.
Which is good. It's beneficial for us because it's got the right amount of space that we kind of need.
Okay.
We can go off and do our in-house competition in one area while the rest of the club is talking. And so we can separate ourselves anyway.
Okay, fair enough. Now, A lot of people obviously go to an IPMS branch meeting for the social aspect and the alcohol normally. You got me at cake.
Yep. Yep. That's our secret. We have the cake.
You do realise you're now going to get absolutely inundated with new members.
Yes, I do.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so you obviously say that your branch displays are slightly different compared to, in inverted commas, the norm. What do your normal branch builds normally turn out to be? Or what's the normal sort of genre that you guys build on a month-by-month basis?
So as a club, we literally will do everything and anything under the sun. We do have people that do just military. We have people that do Warhammer.
Yep.
We have people like myself that does sci-fi and the 3D printing.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to a show outside of this year where we've got the theme, we will work out what the show is and what target audience we're looking at.
Yep.
So what we try and major in is getting the next generation interested in model making, while showing the different aspects of and different genres of models that are out there. So we'll have a bit of the military and we'll have a bit of the TV movie related models, and we'll have the wargaming side of things as well.
Okay. Well, that sounds really interesting. Must admit, most of the branches that we've had on so far have got a very narrow, I'll say narrow. Let's just think about how to word this and actually cut this bit out and put it in so it doesn't sound quite so defamatory. A lot of the branches we've had on so far have either just the military or some ships and things of that nature, but you do seem to have a fantastic cross-section. What's the average age of your members?
Oh, good question. So I'm the anomaly in the club, which is always brilliant for me to say. It's 40s to 60s, or 40 to 60 plus, but that's physical age. Mental age is, we're all a bunch of kids mentally, to be honest.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
We never grow up. We never grow up. Tan, do you welcome younger people to actually join and learn from the older, more experienced modelers?
Yeah, I mean, as a club, we actively encourage it. So we also display at Comic Cons as well, local to us.
Oh, okay.
Try and get the next generation into it. And, from there, they'll come to us. And if we're not their thing, then that's fine. They've still branched out and tried something new.
Yeah.
But yeah, age-wise, we're not fussed. Our main motto is, if it looks good to you, it's good to us. And so if we go to a show and if we do have a youngster there that wants to display something, but they're not sure because, it can be quite daunting. I remember my first run of shows when I was a lot younger, and I didn't want to put any of my stuff out because it didn't feel like it was good enough compared to everyone else's, but we actively encourage it. And there's nothing like that confidence boost to have your model on the display when you are so young.
It's about the encouragement and actually nurturing to actually get them more involved into the hobby, I suppose.
Yeah.
And are you finding that most of the younger people that do come up are more Gundam and Gunpla orientated?
Not so much for us. It's more the Warhammer side of things, to be honest. I think the Gunpla / Gundam / any Bandai models, because they are brilliantly manufactured, I think the younger generation doesn't quite know properly what it is. It looks cool, which is great.
Yeah.
But it hits, the models are sort of targeted for a different age bracket. Whereas like with the wargaming stuff, that's more targeted to the early teens and younger, because it involves the gaming system as well that goes alongside it.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting outlook, because a lot of us have been in the misapprehension that the Gundams were actually looking at the entry level to actually get younger people in, but the TV series, I suppose, that they were actually originally based on seems to be, as with everyone that I know who was listening to Radio 1 back in the days in the UK, those DJs are now on Radio 2, and it's migrating with age as is moving up.
Yeah.
I see now that the Gundam is perhaps not actually, in the UK specifically, perhaps going for such a younger audience, and the wargaming perhaps is the entry level. It's an interesting concept I hadn't actually considered before.
Yeah, so like the wargaming side is, I would say, is definitely more geared towards the younger generation.
Okay.
There are companies now that make models of the Transformers robots,
Mm-hmm.
which again, I would say that's more the younger generation because it's in cartoons, it's in the movies that are still relevant. You watch them, you think, I want to do a model of that, and you can go and pick one up now quite easily.
Okay.
So I think Gunpla or Gundam especially was the jumping point, and I think other companies have then taken that aspect on the pre-colored, pre-painted model
Mm.
and made it relevant to the younger generation.
Okay. Well, this has taken the conversation in a direction I wasn't expecting it anyway. Right. So it then brings on with shows along the lines of Avon, who have both a scale model show, but also combine it with the local wargaming
Yeah.
event.
We love that show. We try and do it every year. And again, they're big supporters of us as a club, and we always support them as well when we can. And that, again, brings in two different crowds that may not necessarily meet, because you've got from a younger person's point of view, i.e. mine, as a person that's grown up in a club for the last 20 odd years, there's two aspects of model making, and it's the wargaming side and the scale model side. And it's very rare, or was very rare, that the two met in the middle. So how Avon do their show is brilliant, because you've got the wargaming setup and people playing the games and showing off their stuff, and then you've got the normal model side. Great to see the two blending into one venue.
Yeah, very much so. And I suppose the next iteration going on from that would be I know the event at the NEC in Birmingham coming up very shortly combines both model railways and scale modelling. Now, the first one, I believe, I didn't go to myself, was very much rail heavy compared to the scale model side of it. But I believe this year there's a larger scale model element to it. And there's always been this, I'll say barrier for want of a better term, where people think that scale or model trains are not the same as scale modelling. But you look at the detail in a lot of the dioramas and the settings for those trains, and it's every bit the same hobby that we're doing. It's just they've actually got a element of the display which actually moves. And although the train itself may be pre-built, it's the background, it's the setting that it's actually in, which is massively exactly the same as ourselves.
Yeah. So weirdly enough, we're doing the show at the NEC as well this year, and it's the first time that we're doing it as well. They've been kind enough to allow us to show off our Breaking the Mold display there. And you're correct, though. It's essentially model rails or model railways. I mean, it's in the title. It's model railway. It's a giant diorama that moves, essentially, for me. And I love that aspect of it as well, because, again, you can get it, that kind of unites two generations as well, or multiple generations.
Yes.
Because you've got the aspect of the trains going round, and you can get all different kinds of trains, from the Hogwarts Express, Thomas the Tank Engine trains. So that interests kids who then, and their parents will build the layouts and make everything. And if that gets people into the hobby as well, that's brilliant. And one can learn from the other in terms of if you wanted a lighting system. There's a lot of lighting systems that are brilliant for trains that can be transferred into the normal models, and vice versa.
Well, when you think of the products that are available for scale modelling for the rail side, the crossover, as you say, is immense. And as he said on the show when we interviewed him last year, Mick Jimenez from Ammo is a big scale model train aficionado. And some of his there is a rail line of paints and products he does, but there certainly would cross over into our scale modelling as well. So yes, the crossover is big, and I think it's quite often overlooked. and it's very often seen as a them and us, but in reality, it's scale modelling. And if we differentiate too much and put too much of a barrier up there, we're going to alienate people that could quite easily be coming into the hobby from our side, which is something we need to tear down that fence.
Yeah, and that ties into what our kind of mission statement is as a club, is to tear that fence down completely and throw it away, because we don't care about age or ability or anything. We want to get rid of that stigma of you're a model maker, you sit behind your desk or you're at a show and you build a model there. It's like, no, we're at the front of our display talking everyone's ears off about what we do.
Yeah.
To try and get the next generation in. And again, that's why we've done music this year, and covering a different variety of genres and eras, because the kids will know people like Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter and Dua Lipa. And all the models are 3D printed. You can get them quite easily off the internet. And then you can have, it's the same fun as building a plastic model. It's just done in resin.
It's still plastic modelling.
Yeah. It's still modeling. It's still a scale.
Yes.
It's essentially everything that ticks the right boxes, just with that it's not a plane, tank, or any form of military.
So Sam, people are interested in coming to join the club. Where are you on the socials?
So we've got a Facebook page, IPMS Middleton Cheney. We're on Instagram at IPMS Middleton Cheney. We've got a website, which is www.ipmsmiddletoncheney.com. I know it's all a mouthful, but I promise it is worth taking a visit to our socials. We post photos of every show that we do, our members' models, and occasionally some random other bits that take our fancy.
Okay, and for those, obviously, that we're going out to 81 countries now, how do you spell Cheney? Middleton, hopefully, is reasonably easy to go with, but...
Hopefully. So Cheney is Cheney.
Charlie Hotel Echo November Echo. Yankee.
Yes, I had to think about that.
Well, Sam, thank you very much for your time. You have opened my eyes to quite a few things in this discussion which I wasn't expecting. And as you say, for a small branch, you seem to be hitting, and don't take this the wrong way above your head, but wow, with what we've actually had discussed in the last half hour or so, more power to your elbow, my friend. Sam, thank you very much for your time. And to quote your first theme, live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
Fishcop Models, elevating scale modeling to an art form. Experience highly detailed 3D printed upgrade parts that bring true authenticity to your builds. Creators of the acclaimed Rolls-Royce Merlin engine set for both the Kotari Spitfire and the Dambusters set for the border models Avro Lancaster. For bespoke design and printing, our service is as precise as it is personal, all at a reasonable price. Please take a look at our products on www.fishcopcompany.de. Shipping is available for all of our products worldwide.
Head to beyondtheboxart.com for host bios, guest features, and direct links to all our social channels. Your central hub for staying connected. And now, our featured interview. Conversations with the people shaping the hobby, from individual modelers to leading manufacturers, exploring every aspect of scale modelling together.
Now, our next guest is a man whose voice is instantly recognisable. You'll have definitely seen his work, usually sat there unapologetically unpainted, quietly judging the rest of us and our questionable life choices with an air of calm and plastic superiority. As Deputy Editor of Military Model Craft International, he spent many years setting the benchmark, often without reaching for a paintbrush, which, depending on your persuasion, is either deeply inspiring or mildly upsetting. He's been around the model podcast circuit recently, popping up on more shows than a limited-run repop. But tonight, we're aiming to get beyond the guest. We want to meet the modeler. So, from across the pond, bringing precision, perspective, and possibly a perfectly assembled but suspiciously bare piece of plastic, please welcome the one and only Rob Riviezzo. From whereabouts in New York are you?
Long Island.
On Long Island.
Long Island, yeah, that's where I'm from. It's not upstate. A big difference between living in Buffalo and living in Long Island. Big difference.
Fair enough. I have driven that route. I drove from, where was it? Toronto to New York.
To the city. You drove to the city?
Yes. Yeah, I drove to the city, but obviously went through Buffalo and a few other places on the way.
Yeah, it's terrible up there. It's like a different state. It's not New York.
I thought you was all about Canada for a minute. I thought, hang on a second.
They pretty are much like Canada up there. But don't, I won't take a lot of for that because I'm not friends with a lot of people from upstate New York, so it's okay.
Fair enough. Okay then, let's have a look at some of our questions, because I know Dan's going to have an absolute myriad of them.
Let's do it.
And the other guys are now looking at their screens thinking, we haven't got a list of questions. I'm going to send them through in just a couple of seconds. We can edit this out and make it sound like we know what we're talking about.
It takes me 10 hours to edit a show. I know what it's like to edit, trust me. Rob Adams is drunk half the time, so I gotta make him sound, he doesn't sound like that pre-edit, trust me. I string along words. Thank God for AI now. I can get him to sound halfway decent, trust me.
I assume you and he are very, very good friends with the...
Well, Rob Adams, yeah, of course. Good. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, with the amount that you dig him out, bless him.
Well, I do take, believe it or not, you should see the messages I get when I rip him apart sometimes. But I do that for a reason, so he can understand that it's like, it's in fun. It's all in fun.
Well, that's what all good mates do, don't they? All mates take the...
If you can't break chops, well, this is the thing with me. If I'm not breaking your chops for joking, that means I don't care. So if I'm joking, that means I care. If I'm not, and it's serious all the time, that means I'm not caring. So I try, maybe sometimes I joke too much, but it's, especially on the air, I think it's just funny. It's the running gag. He's sort of like Dean Martin. He's not always like that. Remember how Dean Martin always acted like he was drunk?
Yes.
That's the shtick. That's the shtick.
Especially in Cannonball too.
Yeah, it's the...
Rob, most people in the hobby know the published version of you. The editor, the reviewer, the podcaster, the guest. How much of that is the real you? And how much of it is a version that you've had to build because that's what the hobby now expects of Rob Riv?
Well, that's what you hear on the podcast is 100% me. That's not a joke. Anybody who knows me in my personal life or outside of the podcast know that I'm like that all the time. So trust me, I'm not for everyone, right? But I'm also very introverted too in some ways because I'm not a big show person where I like at shows, I'm not a big time mingler type person. Like the difference of what you hear on a podcast and me, like at a show, I'm usually more, people come to me more than I go to them, even though I will do it. But when it comes to the bottler, I mean, I think the type of model that I've become, you expect it to be a certain standard sometimes, right? So I've kind of gotten the Riv doesn't paint type of shtick. So I try to keep that stringing along a little bit, even though I do paint and not share it all the time. But a lot of my unshared work is to keep the illusion that I'm not doing the painting.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And I'm guessing that a lot of your unpainted work is for the magazine. So people look at the accessories and the way that the kit's actually constructed and built rather than actually losing it under paint.
Yes. And I've said this before on other shows, on the Insanity or other podcasts. Everybody has a name, and Spencer's a big guy. I've been seeing Spencer's work for years, and doing stuff for Marcus and all over the place. Every time a kit comes out, there's Spencer getting the cover of To Me a Model magazine or something, right? But there's a reason for that because he does amazing work, and he's known as a builder and a painter. For me, I'm known as a builder, so I've gotten opportunities not because of the way I paint. This is the way I've built, right? Like I've always said, Tony Greenland was a very big inspiration for me. And getting back in the hobby and building and doing things, I was always amazed at the type of work he did. And Tom Cockle, And as you get involved in the hobby, I'm thankful to become friends with both of those guys. And obviously, Tony's much older. He's not building anymore. He's had health issues. But I've been thankful to become friends with them in the hobby. And that's kind of molded the type of model that I am. I've always been a builder and love the build aspect of the hobby more. It's not that I can't do the painting and the finishing, and I think I can. And I have. I just find the building more enjoyable. And one of the parts of the hobby that I enjoy the most is I like the teaching aspect of the hobby. I like when people message me or ask how things are done or how did you do this. That's the part of the hobby that I enjoy the most because it makes the hobby more social. Of course, over time, the hobbies become much more social over the years as opposed to years ago when you were stuck in a room and you wanted to share your model. You either put it on a website or hoped you got responses, or you went to your model club or maybe you went to your hobby shop. Today, it's instantaneous. You need a question about what you're doing. You just take a picture on your bench and on Facebook, and within 10 minutes, you got 50 comments. So that's the part of the hobby that I like the most and enjoy the most. And so when I do stuff for, let's say, Dave for MMI or whatever, I do that because I want to show people how I do it. And that's not saying it's the right way to do it. I know that there's this running thing about like there's other ways to make your model better. There's been some debates between myself and other podcasts over the months about like what makes your model special in some ways. And it could be special in a lot of ways. In my way I do my hobby, it's special with my builds. So that's kind of why I emphasize it the most. And it's given me the most opportunity in the hobby because of the way I do it. So
yeah, fully get it. When you're talking to the guys on the Model Geeks recently, you were talking about the episode you had with the health issues and you were unable to build. How did you get back into the hobby? And how did you discover that you could get back into the hobby on the back of it?
Well, I'm a colon cancer survivor, and I was diagnosed young, and I was sick there for a good while. And I was really heavily in the hobby at that point, at my time of my diagnosis and getting sick. But there was a time when I was really sick to the point where, thankfully, hopefully here, no one's ever had any serious health issues that impacted their ability to function properly, not just in the hobby. I'm just talking about in life. As a father, I remember my wife, and I'm going to say this. I remember when I was really sick, I went into a shell where I was like, I guess not functioning mentally properly. And I was ignoring my family. I was ignoring my kids. They were young at the time, and I have an autistic son. And one day I was laying on the couch and wasn't working because I was too sick to go to work. I wasn't feeling good. Mentally, I was worse than I was physically, if that's a good way to put it. Even though I was sick, mentally, I was not 100%. And my wife one day, it was during the summertime, so my wife's a teacher and she would work at my children's day camp. She worked at the camp. And she would put the kids in the car. She comes back in the room and I was on the couch and she comes to me and she goes, "You're acting like you're dead already." She goes, "You're acting as if you're gone, like you've left, you're dead. That's how you're acting. Like you think you're dying, you acting like you're dead, and you're not there for your family right now, and you need to do it." She goes, "Tomorrow, you're getting off the couch." She used an expletive in there. And she's like, "We're going to the movies as a family, like we used to do. We're going to eat, and you're going to live your life." And she left. And I remember I sat up. I remember like it was yesterday. I sat up in the couch, and I just remember just staring at the floor. And I said to myself, I hate saying it, but she's right. She's right. I said, I'm not living right now, and I'm acting as if I'm going to lose this. And maybe if I change my mentality and get myself back in a better frame of mind, that things will be better. And thankfully it did. And from that day, I started living again. And when I got back and healthy and I was able to sit back at the bench, it was a great moment for me because I can't explain. As a model, you gotta be in a good state of mind to be building and doing things. He's just not there. And when I was able to sit back at that bench, it was probably maybe like a month and a half after I had my surgery and I was starting to get on the mend. I was able to sit back actually, I didn't sit at the bench. I actually was sitting on my couch in my living room or my den. And I had like one of those, I don't know what you call them over there in England, but we have like a snack table that you have. And I remember I set the snack table up on my lap and I bought one of I think to me, Jagdpanzer 4 was just released then. That was like back in 2015. And I remember I had it and I was like, I want to build it. And I remember just sitting there, not doing anything special, just cleaning up parts. And I just sat down and I was so happy. And I knew I was back. So if that answers the question, I maybe got a little too philosophical in that mix, but if I talk too much, let me know because I'll talk forever.
Well, between you and Spencer, I think we could actually just pack up and just leave the pair of you to actually have a conversation on your own and get a whole episode. Just one thing to go back on with the time that you were reflecting on yourself, do you think if it had happened today rather than 10, 11 years ago, with the network of friends and colleagues you've now got through the podcast, through the social media as it is today compared to what it was back then, do you think that would have had a different impact on you?
Definitely. It was definitely. Even though I was on Facebook at that time, I wasn't very as active as I was. I've known in the hobby. I was still involved in the hobby, but not to the extent that it is today, 11 years later. It would have definitely made a big difference because we didn't have that, like you said, there wasn't that network of friends, not just like stateside for me, but all the friends that I have that you have abroad that are there. And definitely would have been different today. There've definitely been a lot more support. Now, I had a lot of support from friends and family at the time, but it definitely wouldn't have been. And I didn't tell anybody. Like when I was sick, I never made a public post saying that I was sick or anything. I didn't make a post about me being a colon cancer survivor or having colon cancer. I think if I remember right, it was maybe 4 or 5 months later that I made a post about it, that I was sick, that I'm now better, and just putting it out there. And I got a lot of responses from people then. But it definitely would have, I think the circle of support would have been a lot better or more intense if it would happen, God forbid, today. I always worry about getting sick again. I'm not going to, I would be a liar. My father was young when he was sick, and he got sick 10 years later, and he wound up passing from it. And I always worry about that for myself. That's why I'm kind of the way I am in my life. I try to have fun and enjoy myself as much as possible, and not necessarily be, it's not really all about myself. If you hear me talk on my podcast or on any other show, or if you know me in the hobby, I don't do things for me. I'm past that point. I'm past the point for trying to impress anybody. I'm more worried about what enjoyment are you getting? And we'll just focus on the hobby. There's other parts of my life than the hobby, but the hobby itself, I'm more worried about how people enjoying the hobby and how they're enjoying it. That's why I'm a big advocate when I get into these little spats, maybe with another show, or you hear me go on my little rants about things which people kind of enjoy, especially when it's like explicitly laced. It's meant to like have fun. It's joking. When I complain about like life issues, like when I had the rant about the ATM and people taking too long getting their money out, about the crying babies in a restaurant or something like that. These are funny stories that I know are funny, and when I'm going to tell them, it's going to make someone laugh. And the idea is when you're driving in your car and you're going to your job and you're listening to a modeling podcast, not everybody wants to listen to Spencer talk about painting whatever plane he's building right now, because it gets boring sometimes. No offense, Spencer. But I will say this, when you're driving your car and you start hearing me talk about some lady taking up the ATM for 5 minutes and I'm screaming and yelling in my car, that's funny. We're doing like these other things. Right now on The Insanity, I have that collaboration with Dave Goldfinch on the bench and Whitey. We're doing like these movie showdowns, and they're funny because I'm a big movie guy.
They're brilliant. They are good. I've been really enjoying those, yeah.
Oh, it's fun, because it all started with that Top Gun debate that I had with Whitey. And I was like, listen, you're getting on, we're doing like a special thing. Me and you are going to debate this, and it's going to be funny. And then Dave Goldfinch heard it, and then he starts blowing up my phone. He's saying all these bad things about me, that I know nothing about movies, and he wants to do a show, and that's how we started. So now, tonight, at 8 o'clock my time, we're recording the crime gangster movie showdown tonight, and it's going to be on the bench, though, so it's not going to be on The Insanity. It's going to be on the bench. But that's something that breaks it up a little bit. It's fun, so that's why we do that.
I think what it is, Riv, it's people that voices and names that you're familiar with, but they're in a different context, but also on a familiar vein. So it's like being with your friends at a pub or wherever, having a chat, and then all of a sudden the subject moves on to talking about something else, and you kind of know maybe what people's opinions are going to be, and who's going to have a laugh with it, who's going to be a bit more serious with it, and it's just people that in a different context, and I think that's why it works.
You do. And it's fun, though. You don't understand. I mean, I edited a lot of those shows out. I put some stuff in, but some stuff was really crazy that I took out because me and Dave were freaking going at it. And it was really, really funny. That might be in like another special episode of us going after each other. But that's something to make the hobby enjoyable for other people. That's it. That's why we take the time to do that. And like back to the original question, the circle of support would be just so much more today. Just from the social aspect, but I'm an open book. There's no secrets, I mean, we just have fun, and that's what you need to do. That's why we do it, right?
Absolutely. And when you do your episode on sci-fi TV series, I want to be on that one.
You want to come on? I get you on.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. But as far as White's argument, a reference Top Gun, the original, and the second film, you're wrong. He's right.
Everybody, there's not one person who's agree with my take on Top Gun Maverick.
That second film, Riv, is one of the only movies I went to the cinema to see twice because I thought it was that good.
It was fantastic. Better story. Is it a better movie?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I just find it a better movie. I think the original Top Gun is good for a lot of different reasons, right? It was
What, you mean there's a story for the film? I was just watching the flying sequences.
Yeah, but when they're in the cockpit, it's night and, I mean, it looks terrible compared to the second film. I know they couldn't do that then.
Yeah, but to you.
And it's of its time, but my goodness. And you are right, the love story in it didn't need to be in there. That was totally pointless. Yeah.
Horrible. I was just terrible. I don't want to listen. Tom Cruise, God bless him, as the greatest. I love him as an actor. Forget about his personal life and all the craziness with his religion and things like that. The guy's a great actor. I want to see him jump from one building to the next. I don't want to see him kissing watching Tom Cruise in some romantic thing with anybody for some reason is really cringy. I don't know what it is about Tom Cruise. He just comes off as very, like, not a person that should be doing romance movies at all. Jump over a building, chase a criminal, fly a plane, drive a race car. I don't want you having some like intimacy with anybody. It's really cringy for Tom Cruise.
Apparently, though, Rob, he does paint his model kit, so, you know.
Whoa, Tom Cruise?
Yeah. Well, he's got a real one-to-one Mustang, isn't he? So
he paints? Yeah. Oh, God bless him. At least he's doing something right, I guess.
The Mustang he's worked on is his own Mustang.
Rob, a lot of your work, I would say, it seems to be tied to deadlines and first looks and magazine pages, either unfinished, painted, presentation builds. Would you say that's made you more efficient, or is it actually robbed you of the kind of modelling that made you fall in love with the hobby in the first place?
Deadlines and hobbies are terrible, right? Because you're rushing. You never should rush. You never want to rush things. Like a good example is I only missed one deadline in like 2.5 years. I was working on Dave Grumman, who's a great guy. You guys know Dave, and I know you guys do stuff for Guideline Publications. Spencer, I know you know Dave. Dave Grumman is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in the hobby. And I only let Dave down one time in 2.5 years. He loves the Nash horn. Everybody says I say it wrong, but it's my accent. That's why it comes off wrong. They wanted to do a Guideline. We wanted to do an armor and profile, right? So usually there's like an issue or two where Dave will get reference material on a specific vehicle or whatnot. And we were doing something on the Nash horn. And I've been doing the Tamiya quarter scale Nash horn with the full interior, doing all the brass and doing everything. And I was deadlined and I couldn't get it done. And I said to Dave, I don't know if I'm going to get this done. Things aren't working the way it should be. And it's never going to look the way I want it to be. Now I can get it done, but it's not going to be done to the way I want it to be done. And he's like, listen, don't worry about it. He's like calling me off the ledge. I'm not going to get this done. He's like, calm down. It's okay. We can do other things. And we did. And I missed that deadline. And then we still haven't released it yet, actually. But yeah, it's maybe more efficient, but it also isn't the way I like to model though, at all. I'm not like that. I like to build at my leisure. And when I do that, it's more enjoyable. When you build at deadlines and stuff, it does take the enjoyment out of the hobby, a lot of it. When you can build on your own at your own pace, and when it's done, you know, Spencer will tell you, I can write a 3,000 word article. Like, just give me my notes on my iPhone. I'll be on the toilet writing my article. Not a problem. That's not the issue. Writing the article is easy.
Yeah.
It's taking the pictures, building, stopping, taking pictures, building, stopping, taking pictures, and getting all that done. That's the part of the hobby that's, when you're doing the articles, is the most time consuming. It's not the writing. It's the building, stopping, taking pictures, setting up that little staged picture of your hands underneath the camera. It takes time and it eats into it. Sometimes when I'm deadline, I'm taking my shirts off. I'm half naked in my model room. I'm sweating, trying to get this article done, there's pictures. And I'm like, I can't do it anymore. I tell Dave, I'm like, this is my last 16 scale model. I'm never doing another one again. Tell Gecko I'm not building one. And what do you think I'm building right now? I'm building another 16 scale Gecko model that I'm doing, the Marta 2. So it's definitely made you more efficient, but it definitely isn't fun though, Dan. Definitely not.
Rob, what's your approach to the 1/16ths? How does that change from the 48ths or the 35ths?
Well, I think that a lot of the 16 scale models, I would say like the Trumpeter or now Gecko, they're really well detailed models. Now, I feel like you need to add less external details or aftermarket details to those models to bring it up. Granted, there are some clunky parts to them. You know, I'm not going to say there isn't. Some of those models have some clunkiness to the design. Overscale, maybe a little underscale. But I find that the 16 scale kits don't need as much of the aftermarket appeal to them, which in turn doesn't make it as appealing to me. Because the appealing part of a hobby for me is adding that stuff.
Yeah.
Making and buying, scratch building or buying an aftermarket set for something. That's the part that I enjoy. Ripping out the weld beads, doing them your own, replacing the barrel, replacing the tool handles and the brackets and things like that. On 16 scale, you really don't need it. So my personality as a modeler isn't coming out in that scale.
Do you look forward to building a 16 scale kit?
No. Matter of fact, I think I'm burnt out on 16 scale now, to be honest with you. I've done a lot of it. Over the last, I have so many models that are built and not painted in bins, just stacked and stacked and stacked. And if I ever took a camera and showed you, I would have to be put away into some padded room. I have so many models, and 16 scale is so big that you need room for that. And I have, over the last year, had Andy Klein from Andy's Hobby Headquarters here in the States sends me 16 scale stuff to build. Gecko models now, the Trumpeter stuff, the Doswork stuff. Like I started building I love Stugs. I'm a big Stug fan, Stug for whatever. Love them. I was like, you know what? I want to build one. I want to finally build it. And I've been building it little here and there, and I hate it. I was so excited to build it, but I don't want to build it anymore because I've been building so much 16 scale that I'm sick of it. If I see another 16 scale kit after this Model 2, I don't know, man, I might have a nervous breakdown. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not a fan anymore. I used to be. I was a fan at one point in my life, but I became not a fan because I get inundated with 16 scale stuff. No more.
Yeah. I think I enjoy looking at other people's, but it's just not for me.
I got a lot of them for paint. If you live here, I'll give you a bunch. I got an MM13. I got an SDKFZ, what is it, the 11 or the whatever it was. From Doswork. I got the Stug. I got the Marta 2. I got the Universal Carrier from Gecko. What else did I do? I did a couple other ones, and now I'm blanking. See, I kind of erased it from my memory of the ones that I did.
I see the 16th as when you pinch and zoom and you just keep zooming and zooming and zooming, that detail and layering of weathering scratches and dust and grime and grease, and you can't just put a wash on it and say done. On a 48th, that is one of the reasons why I'm an absolute fanboy for the 48 scale, because you can if you want, but also don't have to. Whereas 16th, if you don't do it, it's just going to look like an Action Man toy or a G.I. Joe toy out the box, as you guys would say.
Go look at Spud Murphy's. Go look at his Tiger 1 that he's doing, or the MM13 that he did prior. I mean, I didn't see it in person, but I talk to Spud all the time, and it's amazing, the work that he's done.
Yeah, but even he had issues with that first go at the camo pattern that he put on it and said, this isn't right. And I think 16th scale changes even what your airbrushing work has to be.
Right. You got to approach it. 72nd scale aside, Alex Clark, God bless him, spends a lot of time in that. I had Alex on the quarter scale show. We have the quarter scale show, and we're going to be recording more episodes soon. Stan has been a little busy with his new model box shop. Luke Pitt's mad at me. He calls me up every other day yelling like an old man. He's the type of guy that yells at the kid on his lawn. Dig it up when he calls me up complaining that we're not recording shows. But quarter scale and 35th scale are very, very similar, in my opinion, when it comes to the approach. 16th scale takes it and changes the script. It's a different script when it comes to weathering, bringing a 16th scale model to life, because you can't just do you want to do chipping and you want to do wear and tear on a 16th scale. You really got to, know what you're doing to make it look realistic, because it's just that big, because any issue or any glaring issue is just that much more prominent on a 16th scale kit.
A quick question I was going to ask on the 16th compared to the 48th. Do you use different products for your weathering? Does the pigment and the structure of what they produce for obviously a smaller scale work with the larger scale?
Well, I think it does. Absolutely. It's just more of it, I guess, in the way you use it. It's just, yeah. I mean, it's not like they make Paul. It's not like they're making, it's not like 8K's making pigments for 16 scale models. Imagine that. They started having specific projects for specific scales. We would have a problem on our hands right now, But it's the approach, Paul. It's the approach because, again, it's on a 16 scale. The canvas is so big, just so big that you're going to see a lot of those glaring issues. Like, I don't know if you guys ever been to like the Met over in the United States, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And you look at some of these great paintings. I'm sure you got great museums the way you guys are, but when you go there, and my daughter's an artist, and she gets mad at me when I say things, especially when we see the modern art, like the Jackson Pollock stuff. I'm like, I could do this. You could pay me $1 million. I'll throw paint on the wall. I'll be perfect. But you look at some of those paintings and you go, wow, man, they're terrible. Why is this so, like this is terrible. Like you can see the brush strokes when you get up close, when you're really close to it. And it's the same way with models because you're supposed to be looking at them from a specific distance, right? When it's 48 scale, you're supposed to be looking at it from a specific distance. Same thing with 35th and then 16 scale. You're not supposed to be up on it with optivisors, checking every seam and every little issue with the model like they do at model shows, right? They're really meant to be, Spencer, am I right? Am I right about that? That when you're viewing a model...
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Or a figure, you're viewing it from a specific distance. I learned that from the great old Shep Payne when he talks about the distance to view a specific size figure. That's why you got to make sure that with a 16 scale, you're not viewing it from as far as you are from a 48 scale model. So you better make sure you're spot on with your weathering and your painting,
So that actually raises a very interesting point. With judging for competitions, are judges looking at scale distance of the model, or are they looking too close to get the effect that they're actually trying to achieve?
They're giving those models a colonoscopy, Paul. They'll go back to me being sick. Get the freaking screen and get the camera. They're going right up on that model and checking it out, like giving it a physical, right? I mean, that's like, I have never been to scale. I've never been to SMC. I would love to go one day, but everybody who knows me knows I'm deathly afraid of flying. So you got to...
The Mr. T of the model world.
You got to B.A. Baracus me to get on something. And I'm not just talking about like, a shot in the neck. You better make sure that's laced with a lot of good stuff because I got to be out for a good while. But you watch people judging and you're like, what are they like? Wow, they're really up on that model looking at it. Yeah, that's the essence of modeling today is the fact that they're not looking to see things that make it good. They want to look at they want to find things that are wrong with your model. They're not looking at things to see of any good things, right?
I think part of the thing with that, though, is with competitions is that the standards have become so high, you've got to look at them that closely to differentiate one high-class model from another high-class model.
Right.
Whereas back in the day, there would be a wide variety of different styles across the board on a competition table. Now you could have 50 models sat on a competition table, all looking almost identical to each other.
Identical.
Mm-hmm. How do you differentiate one of those models from another? And the way you do that is you get in and up close and personal with them.
Absolutely.
And that's what the judges are doing. That they have to do that to be able to split them apart.
They have to do that. I say that all the time, that every model today, like you go to like, let's say we have AMPS Nationals coming up here in the United States, which is a big national show. It's nothing compared to like some of those shows by you guys, but there'll be about 700-800 armor models at the show. 3/4 of them will look exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like you said, Spencer, how do you differentiate? You do got to get up there and check.
Yeah. You made a really interesting point as well about models should be looked at certain distances. I think that's absolutely true. I've just completed the Leopard 207. I painted the figure on it. The figure looks fine when the model's in my hand, but I take a photograph of that to blow it up for a magazine and you put it on an IMAX screen and all of a sudden it looks dreadful.
Right.
It's not that it doesn't even look good.
Mm-hmm.
It looks awful because you're blowing it up 20 times bigger than it is in reality.
Exactly.
And I think people forget about that. It's unless you're a genius who works under a microscope and you can paint. There's a Japanese guy who paints his figures under a microscope, and you can do that kind of thing. But models should be seen. We work in magazines, Rob, don't we? And magazine images are always blown up way bigger than the actual reality of the subject.
Absolutely.
So if you have a 48 scale model or a 72nd scale model and it's blown up across 2 A4 pages, unless it's absolutely flawless across the board, you're going to see errors on that. And those errors are then going to be allotted to the modeler. Oh, he's made a mistake.
Right.
No, he hasn't made a mistake. So if you look at that in your hand, you're never going to see that. It's going to be fine. It's going to be absolutely fine.
Never going to see it. When I take pictures of my work that I'm going to either share on social media or get them ready for the publications, especially with my macro lens that I use on my Nikon, that's like blowing up like a small little part in 48 scale. I can make my screen for my computer is a pretty big screen. So I don't know, it's 36 inches, right? So I can make a little tool clamp literally the size of my screen on my computer. Now you're talking about something half the size of your pinky nail that on my computer screen is the size of my hand. You can see every dust, every piece of imperfection that was ever made in. Now translate that to a kit part, like that's plastic, like you said, Spencer. When it's blown up, you can see a lot of those errors because it's not meant to be looked at in that size. And your normal eye can't see that, shouldn't be able to see it. If you could see it, you're going to be on one of those Marvel movies. You got superpowers. But you're right, though. Scale distance is a big factor. And like you said, Spencer, about the magazines, it is getting blown up in a lot of those pictures, and it's being seen in a way that it's not meant to be seen by the human eye.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's always been the case when I was editing magazines, for a very long time. I tried to say to the designers, this model is only 3 inches across. Do not make this model 12 inches across, because any errors that are in the images are going to be so highlighted. Try and keep it so that it looks at least similar to the size.
Right.
And also, I think that can be self-defeating for the modeler as well, who is building and painting something, and then they're putting that image onto their computer screen to have a look at it before they put it on social media. And they notice a mistake, and they think, oh, there's a mistake on that. I don't want everybody else to see that mistake. Can you see that mistake in reality? No, you can't.
Yeah.
So you then start to second guess whether or not your work is any good, because you're seeing errors and mistakes that in reality aren't visible. They're only visible because we go through this illusion of putting them onto computer screens and then putting them onto Facebook or wherever, where people can then enlarge them. It can be it's a whirlpool then of kind of like second guessing your ability, because you're seeing things that should never be seen in reality.
Right.
Or will never be seen in reality,
The European publications are like notorious for, like you said, blowing up pictures, right? Go look at military modeling, the Japanese ARPA magazine that Masahiro Doi used to do and everything. And I have boxes of those because those are my favorite magazines. And you look at those and you realize why the photography is so bad. Go look at some of those magazines, especially older versions.
Yeah.
And all the pictures everything is so far away. Like they're taking pictures of the photo etch on some workbench. And it's like, my God, it's like, who took that picture? There's a reason why they did that. Because they know the imperfections that are all in that stuff, because they're rushing so fast to do those issues.
Yeah.
They were never built the best.
Yeah. Well, a good example of that would be, take a look at Shep Payne's dioramas. And if he was publishing those online these days, you would see so many errors on those models. And yet when they're seen in the round and they're seen as they're supposed to be seen, they're some of the greatest models ever made.
Yeah. I've seen Shep's work in person. A couple of guys, Jim Diragat, Barry Biediger, guys on the small subjects, they own some of his work.
Oh, really?
And they bring him to like MFCA and some of the shows here in the States. And yeah, I mean, without Shep, we didn't have a lot of those techniques. So a lot of things would be a lot different today. We bought models because of those old monogram inserts back in. Well, you guys, Brownie's an old man, right? You guys are young. Brownie remembers the insert. You remember those old inserts that made you want to buy those dioramas, those 1/32 scale kits, But you're right, though, Spence. Listen, this is good conversation. We're diverting from the questions. I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time. This could be a 5-hour podcast today.
You mentioned Jim Duragotis. He did the book. I mentioned it to these guys when I was last on here. And I talked about the book that he wrote about Shep. You have a look in there.
Oh, yeah.
And also, and we can circle right back to the points that you made 20 minutes ago about deadlines. Shep Payne's dioramas that he was building for Monogram, these were 2-week builds. He was building what are now seen as some of the most classic dioramas ever created in the hobby. He was building those at such speed. You know, he was taking 2-3 weeks to put these things together, box them up, send them out to Morton Grove, because Monogram needed them for the inserts so that they could release kits. He wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, well, I've got like 6 months to put this thing together. He was thinking, I've got 6 days to put this thing together. And the results would stand the test of time for the next 50 years. Unbelievable.
That shows his ability as a modeler and also an imagination of an artist, because he was doing it without any prerequisite knowledge of things. Like, he created it. Like, what you saw Shep Payne do is he made that. People like today, like over the years, you see people, like you said, recreating the Shep Payne dioramas and things, like trying to recreate like the Storm Tiger breaking through the wall and the crash plane diorama that he did and all that other stuff. This man didn't have anything to go by. He made everything himself. He was using like art supplies and ink pens, for God's sake, to do his work. You know, so yeah.
Yeah. And we talk about hyper detailing, super detailing models these days and going in quick. None of those models were detailed.
Right.
You look at Aid Station, which is probably my favorite Shep Payne diorama. You look at that Jeep going around the corner by the...
Yeah.
There's no detail on that model.
None.
There's almost no accessories. The building couldn't be any plainer without it being just, and yet you look at it and you know exactly what he's saying. You know, where the story was so paramount to everything that he was.
Because of his composition.
Yeah, his composition. Yeah.
Yeah.
His composition was so good. Yeah. It's all the best out there. Before they put paint on anything, you look at one of my absolute favorite modelers, which is Roger Herkmans. His composition is unbelievable.
Oh, he's the best.
And he can fit so much story into a 6-inch square base, and he gets his angles. And you look at the roof lines, he never just cuts off a building. He'll have asymmetric roof lines going on that break up angles in such a small space. I mean, and the bridge too far that he did of the paras on the bridge at Arnhem, all he used was a few sections of the I-beam or the RSJ section of that bridge, but you knew exactly where that part was in the sweep and the angle that he took. Composition is everything before you've even picked up a paintbrush. It really is.
He's amazing, Roger Herkman. And it's funny you mentioned Shep, but I got to mention this. One of my good friends, he's been kind of out of the hobby for the last couple of years, Dan Capuano. I'm sure people know Dan or heard of Dan Capuano. When he did those great dioramas of like Paraloo and Cellar Dwellers and things like that. And before Shep Payne died, Shep got Dan at one of the MMSI, which is the Chicago show.
Yeah.
And he got Dan in a room and he goes, "You do amazing work," his Shep said to him. "Amazing. Your painting is amazing, but your composition sucks." That's what he said to him. He's like, "You got to start."
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what he said to him. Well, Dan used to make those 100-figure dioramas, Spencer, where like you don't know what the focal point is. It's just like 100 W's standing around. Amazing. But like I was like, you know what, man? I don't care that you got yelled at. That's Shep Payne yelling at you. I wish Shep Payne would yell at me.
Yeah, I met Dan at an AMP show back in 2001, 2002, I think. I had a chat to him then. And I told the story to the guys here. The only time I'm never starstruck. You know, I just don't believe in it. I just think, we're all equal. Until I was in a room where Shep Payne was.
Yeah, I can imagine it.
He was at the Chicago show and he walked in, and I was a lot younger then. I was only late 20s, early 30s. And I'd gone over there and he walked in and I was so starstruck. I couldn't, and I really regret it now that I didn't go up to him and say hi,
Oh, he was a personal, I mean,
yeah.
I never met him in person, but from what I know, he was a very personable guy.
That's what I heard. Yeah,
Have a drink and hang out and talk. He was a good man. And I was stuck that Dan Capuano told me that story and always stuck with me because I was like, Shep Payne got you in a room and was yelling at you, man. That's awesome. I wish I had Dan. I wish he was yelling at me. That would have been a great experience. But that's how the hobby is. We're going off tangent here. What's the next question here, Brownie? Brownie's got like a whole laundry list of questions he's got for me.
No, I got virtually no questions in comparison to what we normally ask because I knew that we would just have verbal diarrhea.
All right. I don't need my translator. I was a little worried that I was going to need a translator because you guys got funny accents. It's kind of hard for me to keep up when I listen to the show.
You're not talking to Sully now, mate.
I got to put on my Google Translate next to it.
Just remember, we invented the language.
Did you hear what I said with Dave Goldfinch on the one in the outtakes when I was like, it's the Queen's English? And he's like, it's the King's English, you idiot.
The only question that I've got, Riv, is obviously you've covered so much there, is all of the influence that you have in the hobby now and all of the influence that we've talked about. Has that changed your tastes in the kind of models that you do?
A little bit. And I'm going to tell you why. Spencer talks about he did the leopard. I did one too for the magazine, and I got it early too as well. For one, I don't always share my painted work, and I never do modern armor. And in that case, I did a modern armor in quarter scale, and I'm going to tell you right now, I enjoyed every second of that model. Even though there's certain parts of that model that I wasn't happy with, and Spencer will agree, like the decals for the turret side bins and stuff like that, I wasn't happy about, but I enjoyed it. And I felt like I was obligated because it is quarter scale, and because I do a quarter scale show with Stan Spooner and Luke Pitt, which I consider some of the best quarter scale models, him next to Pat Johnson and a couple of people, to be the best quarter scale modelers around. And I had to show those guys up. So I felt like if I didn't take on that challenge, I wouldn't be able to, and I remember when I finished that model, Luke messaged me and goes, you did a great job on it. And that made me feel good. So yes, I think that I sometimes feel obligated to do some of that stuff. Is that what the question was?
Yeah, I think you have, because obviously when we start as modelers, none of us start as influencers. I'm not speaking for myself there, but like when we start off, we pick up a model in a shop and think, oh, that looks cool, I'm going to build that. But obviously, and Spencer's spoken about this a lot as well, there comes a point where it's the people behind the hobby that are influencing the path that you're going to take.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm going to say this, and I talked about this on the Model Geek show, and I brought this up when I was giving Scott Nemo Samo his counseling session. If you listen to that last Model Geeks podcast, I put my psychology hat on, and I had to give an intervention to Nemo because he was saying how much he hated the hobby now. And by the time I was done with them, he realized he was wrong. That was the whole purpose of that conversation. But I did say something on the show, and I take it from my co-host on The Insanity, who's Frank Donati, who I love, and Frank's a great guy. He always uses the term the 1%ers, right? And we say 1%ers, not to say that we're better than people. It's that there's 1% of the hobby that takes the hobby very seriously, that it's sort of a part of your life in one way or another. It could be in a lot of ways. It could be someone who does podcasts, who publishes stuff for magazines, writes books, might do seminars at shows, does things on a daily basis for a certain amount of hours every single day, like I do, and I'm sure all of you guys do. We're the 1%ers. There's 99% of other people out there who are buying the Tamiya kits and buying all these other models that are keeping these model companies in business. It ain't us, it's them. And when they're sitting down building a model, they're not worried about what glue they're using. They're using the red Testors glue. They're not worrying about the paint they're using. They're using the little Testors paint jars, and they got a paintbrush. And they're sitting at the table with their son and daughter like we did when we were younger, and built the model and didn't care what people thought about it or how they were doing it. They were doing it and having fun and enjoying themselves. That's most of the hobby. The 1%ers, the ones that we try to be influencers in some ways, however you want to influence people. Now, I'll never try to influence somebody to try to, do something they shouldn't be doing or don't want to do. I'll try to influence people to try something different, be different. And a lot of things that I say is for people to be your own modeler, make your own technique, be the next Adam Wilder, be the next Mig Jimenez, be the next Spencer Pollard, somebody. Do something in this hobby that's going to make you different. Because if you're just going to keep doing what everybody else is doing and saying the same talking points that everybody say, you're never going to improve as a model and be your own person. Like when you write a book and you're a writer, you don't want to write like Stephen King or write like Dan Kuhn with like all these other people, whoever, write like, J.K. Rowling's and people. You want to write like Rob Riviezzo, or you want to paint like Rob Riviezzo. You don't want to paint like Leonardo da Vinci or Monet or somebody. You want to be your own painter. You want to be your own writer and your own modeler. And I try to say, use bits and pieces of the hobby that you learned and saw and use it to make yourself better and do your own thing and make your own style and use it to influence other modelers to try new things. Like when people ask me, like, I love soldering and all the photo etch and all that stuff. Is it hard? No, it's not hard for me because I do it all the time. But it's not hard. It's hard for a lot of other people. And you can't be just like naive or blasé about, oh, well, it's easy. It's easy for me because I do it all the time and I found a method that works for me. I'll share my method with people and I tell people, this is what I do. This works for me. Do it and then come up with your own type of technique that works even better for yourself, right? Not everything works for everybody. Not everybody loves the dot filters on their models. Right? We talked about going to a model show. Spencer talked about it, about you go to a show, maybe you need to be right up against the model because you need to differentiate what the good stuff is because everybody's models from a certain distance looks the same, right? The idea is what new techniques are you going to do, right? They came out with the color modulation. They came out with the dot filters years ago, right? Adam Wilder did this. They did the whole light sourcing and all this other stuff or whatever what is it? What's that word that the figure painters use now? Zenithal lighting and stuff. It's all just a goofy way to say the same thing, right?
Yeah. Riv, have you ever tried to build, or probably not so much build, but have you ever tried to paint like someone and it just hasn't worked? Because I've obviously been, since getting back into the hobby, you've got all these names, all these YouTube stuff, everything sort of thrown at you and you go, right. And you start seeing all of what I call the Champions League guys, referring back to football, is those who are regularly mentioned that are at the top. Now, I've tried so many builds. I've tried to go, right, I'm going to try and do it how they do it. And it never, ever goes there. I always now find my groove and my way. And this little M10 Achilles, I was like, yeah, that's my way. That's my way of doing it. And I'm not trying now. I'm not trying to do what anyone else does. Just wonder if you've ever tried it.
I always try different things. Of course, you want to try something, right? You know, you read a recipe, you see someone make something and you want to cook it. And you're going to start off with the recipe, right? And then you change it to fit your taste, right? You want to make chicken cacciatore and you got a recipe and you make it and you go, this is good and it's good, but it needs this. I need to add this or reduce this. And that's what you do with a technique in the hobby, right? Color modulation. I hate it. I hate the way I've done it. I've tried it. I don't like the way it looks on a model. I think it looks like, especially when you go to a show, you know, it's good for photography. And I'm going to say this and I try to get back to this. There's a difference between taking and painting models for pictures. Big difference. It's a big difference to see things in a picture than it is in person. And when you see these models that have all this, like the bolts are 20 shades lighter than the hull and this panel's this color than this panel, it's lighter here but darker here. Yeah, it looks great in pictures from certain angles that you're putting your camera. But in person, it just doesn't have that realistic look. And I'm not saying that it needs to be realistic because it's not. It's not a metal tank or a plane or ship or car. It's plastic that you're trying to represent as a real thing. And when you start doing all this color modulation, you're light sourcing this and doing that, how am I not supposed to know as a viewer what the light source is? Like, what source is it coming from? Is it coming from the right side? Is it coming from the top? Is it coming from this? Where am I supposed to look? And that's the problem with color modulation, because the left side of the tank should not look like the right side of the tank, especially when it comes to the lighting. And that's the problem with color modulation. And I've tried it, Dan. I've tried it, and I never liked it. I just never did. Another technique. I hate sponge chipping. I hate it. Like, I'm not a fan of sponge chipping at all. Yeah. Did someone find lightning in a bottle? Like, oh, you use a sponge and you can do all these different chips. Just rotate it. Yeah, but after a while, the whole entire model looks like you sponge chipped your model. That's not how tanks chip. It's not how it is. Like, I did this, I'm doing a Syrian Stug, and every chip on that thing, and I've been chipping it for like 6 months. I go in there every couple of hours. I do a little more because you come back with clear eyes and your mind resets, right? And then you can see issues prior. But I did everything with a Winsor Newton Series 7 000 brush. Every chip on that model, it's taking me hours. I'll show you some pics. I'm going to have new ones. I'll share them with you, Dan. Point I'm trying to make is, yes, I tried those techniques. And a lot of them don't work for me because they, in my opinion, in my eyes, they don't look realistic. And when I go to a show and I see someone with that really like gaudy, listen, this is going to cause more, I'm going to get emails from other people on other shows going to come after me and want to fight again. But I'm not a big fan of that light sourcing, color modulation, all this crazy highlighting. And this bolt is like this shade of yellow, even though it's this shade of yellow in the tank, it just does not look real. And it doesn't translate well.
Yeah. I go to a lot of military shows here with real vehicles. And again, with the camera, and you take video and you see the tanks, and inevitably they are tearing round. I mean, usually our summer, there's always that weekend when the show's on. We've had a lot of rain, and it's fantastic because you're seeing a Sherman or whatever tearing around in an arena, and it's throwing mud and stuff up. And when it's finished, they park up and you can go and walk around them and actually see where this stuff ends and lands. And of course, the guys are climbing up on the wheels, climbing onto the deck, climbing onto the top. And you actually see, so that's my foundation. That's where I tried the different modelers that are out there. I tried all the names. I was like, I bought the books, I've watched the YouTubes, and I'm like, I can't do it because it's not real enough for me. I try to emulate what I see in the real world on a small thing, you know?
I remember I had a conversation with Mig Jimenez years ago, and I forgot where it was at. He was at a show in the States. And I was talking to him, and I was like, Mig, wow, this model looks different than was in the, I forgot what it was in. It was wasn't in one of the fact books, because before that, in some magazine, it was in someone's publication. And he goes, because at that time when Mig was starting to do a lot of publications, this was before AK, he got involved with AK and stuff like that. This is around the Mig production time. Spencer remembers. This is around the time when Mig Productions first came on the market, probably. Were you part of World War II Model Maker, Spencer? Were you part of the World War II Model Maker group? We were all in there. We used to do Yahoo Chat. Were you part of that?
Were you on the MiG Productions forum back in the day? Do you remember that?
I was on there, yeah. But I was also, we used to do World War II Model Maker, which was the other Network 54 forums. There was Missing Links, TrackLink, and then there was at World War II Model Maker. So MiG was big on that, and that was when MiG, the pigments came about. But the point I'm trying to make is, I said to him, and he goes, I've been trying, at that time he even said, he goes, I'm trying to make the shadows darker and the highlights brighter for photography reasons. And that's why. And the thing is when sometimes when you're building for publications, and Spencer will tell you, depending on your lighting and the camera you're using and the type of lighting, the lighting today is a lot different than 20 years ago when it comes to the lighting that you're using for photography, especially for small scale stuff and photo booths. But the lighting is going to impact how flushed out or washed out your model is going to be. And you got to really know your settings. You got to know how to put your lighting, because if a model doesn't have that contrast, sometimes it doesn't translate to photographs well. So a lot of our model is someone like even Adam Wilder is doing his models in a way where it's going to translate to a better photograph, in my opinion. And I think that's the reason why. I think subconsciously even myself will do that when it's painted.
So does any of this actually help modelers that are not beginners, but going into that intermediate phase where are you getting the wrong influences? I don't know. If you're trying to emulate a style that's actually its foundations are for magazines,
yeah,
then that's not going to translate to what you're doing on your bench, is it?
It's information overload today. You're inundated with pictures and work from people. I have a modeling page. Spencer's got a modeling page. A lot of people have modeling pages. You share your work on specific pages. On Facebook, just speak to Facebook. I'm not big on Instagram, but Instagram is a lot of people are on Instagram sharing work all the time. I'm just not that tech savvy to be able to do that. But Facebook in particular, my feed, if it's not an ad like a million times over in my feed, which is always like every other thing is an ad or something, you're inundated with photos from people of their work. It's sensory overload. And if you're not, and in my opinion, if you're just coming out in the hobby and you're trying to learn, the amount of information that's available to you, it can just make your mind blow up. Because where do you start? Where do you start to figure out where you need to improve? If you don't have a good friend circle, at least in the hobby, where you got people you can trust that are going to be honest with you. I'm not saying you have to be a world-class modeler. Just have to be some sort of competent modeler that you're going to be able to get the right opinion. You got to say, people ask me all the time when I'm at a show, Riv, come take a look at my model. Give me your honest opinion. And I sit down and I go, do you want the honest opinion? Or do you want to hear what you want me to say? Because I'll tell you what I think. Doesn't mean it's right, but I'll give you my honest opinion. And they go, honest. I'm like, all right, here it goes. Right? So you need to have honest critiques from other modelers that are going to be able to honestly critique your model. And they're not going to be able to do it on social media. Because taking pictures, because not everybody takes good pictures. More than half the pictures on Facebook are not done well. The lighting is off. The color is not the right way. Because they're not taking the right pictures. That's a big factor when it comes to critiquing models. Like I just did Models Without Borders, all right? I want to say that there was other people helping, and Stan did help me a little bit on the armor side, but for the most part, I kind of did it a lot on my own. And it was really difficult to judge people's models for that online virtual contest because there was a lot of models, a lot of modelers, I should say, submitted a lot of pictures that were not the best. And you can't give an honest critique of a model from a photograph. You just can't. You can't check the build. You can't tell if there's any build issues really, unless it's really glaring. And you can't really tell about the paintwork, especially the base coating, because you don't know what way they were at. It's not like they're giving you stages of the build and the paint job. It's one finished piece. And half the pictures were terrible. Terrible angles, terrible lighting, cell phone pictures using like an old iPhone 8 maybe when they were taking some of those pictures. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Riv, do you think the products doesn't help as well when there's just so much product, you know?
That's the problem. But it's the
bottles of potions and whatnot. I think that's quite overwhelming, isn't it?
It's the products that's made everybody's models look the same. It's the same techniques. It's the same products. It's the same videos on YouTube. It's the same magazine articles. It's the same thing. Streak this, streak that, the chip this, chip that, make this lighter, make this darker, use this, use that. I just think that it's the products that's made. Not saying that the hobby is not in a great spot. I mean, God, people listen to me here think it's doomsday.
No, not at all.
Not saying it's doomsday. I think the hobby is as healthy as it's ever been. I'm talking about like the state of armor, let's say in particular, of like where the influence are coming from and what the products are being used. Years ago, you made your own products. You did your own thing. You bought your Winsor Newton or your Rembrandt oils. You went and got pastels and you ground them down. You made your own washes. You got your own artist inks and tried things. I remember sitting on my bench in like the 90s, just ruining model after model, trying out new stuff. I wanted to do something different. Now, these are models I didn't care about, but I was trying new things, trying different products. And the thing is, when everybody's using the 8K products and they got the book, and don't get me wrong, I love Rick Law. Rick's a great friend. Rick, if you're listening, I'm not going after you. Rick will sit at Micro Games table at like a Nationals or an Amps, and he'll demo a lot of the 8K stuff, right? Because he works for 8K now. He does a lot of the books, and he's trying to sell product, and I respect that. But the thing is the markers, the pigments, the streaking grime. Like how many? I own them. I'm not gonna lie. I got a bunch of 8K pre-mixed bottles, but when you open those suckers up, you're like, all right, I got the dark streaking grime. I got the dark streaking grime. I got the dark streaking grime. What the hell am I spending $8-10 a bottle on this? It's all the same stuff. It's a little darker. I can make this myself. What am I doing? That's the problem. Everybody's buying it. Everybody's using it. This guy, I bet you go to a show, especially in the US, and there's like 5 models on an armor table. I guarantee every one of them has some 8K product on top of them.
Of course. Yeah.
But I'll tell you that now, I bet you Spencer was probably a mainstay at Euro Militaire back in the day, which I never went to. But I can tell you right now, I guarantee that 5 models in a row on that table back in the day, they weren't all using the same products on their model, right, Spencer?
No, that's absolutely true. And I'm sitting here, this is like I'm having my own personal fever dream, fueled by Rob, because I honestly cannot believe how much what you've said has chimed with my own personal opinion over the last hour.
Me and you, Spencer, are a team here. Let's get together. Let's start it.
I mean, it's literally like I wrote the script for you and you're reading it out.
We did. Should we let them know that you told me to say all this? Well, it's out. Spencer sent me the script prior to this. He told me to say all this. He owes me money. It's 2 Z's in Riviezzo, Spencer. I don't know how the checks work over there.
I genuinely haven't disagreed with a thing you've said. I mean, we are very much in a place now where personal style has gone out of the window because everybody wants to be using those products. There's no two ways about it. So you can't differentiate one modeler's work from another modeler's work because often they look exactly the same. If you're all buying the same books, if you're all buying the same products, if you're all using the same techniques, like you say, if you're all watching the same YouTube videos, human beings naturally want to belong. They don't want to be the one singled out. So you aren't going to get something on a display table. I had a conversation at Scale Model Challenge last year with a guy who's really high up in the fantasy figure world. He's got an incredible YouTube channel, and he paints phenomenal work, and you'd imagine all those fantasy figures. And I had a conversation and said, do you think you could paint a Second World War armor diorama using your techniques? And how do you think that would go down? And I thought that was kind of the whole idea of it, of creating something that looked like it was painted for the Warhammer universe. How would that translate? Somebody had the sort of stones to do that. And he said, yeah, you could do that. And I said, how do you think it would go down? And he said, well, looking at all of the work that's on the display, he says it probably wouldn't go down very well, because that's not the style of 2026.
Right.
And yet, back in the day, the Euromilitaire days, you'd go, yeah, that was Douglas Lee's work. Yeah, that was Roger Blutman's work. Yeah, that was Phil Stachinskis' work. Yeah, that was da-da-da-da-da. And you would go along, each one of them would all be different from each other. These days, that's not the case. And also, going back to the point that you made about 10 minutes ago about information overload, that's absolutely true. There's now so much online, and there are so many photographs online, that you're essentially scrolling through dozens and dozens of pictures each day of some new armor build. When was the last time you looked at something and it just instantly grabbed your attention?
Right.
That's more often than not the exception, isn't it, these days? You go, oh yeah, that's really different. Often you'll go, yeah, that's a cool kind of build, that's a cool model. But you're not seeing anything that's truly different or groundbreaking in that sense. And I'm not suggesting that, I think Mike Rinaldi got into quite a lot of trouble over this, because he was saying, where's the next?
Right, he did.
Where I'm not suggesting for a single second that that's wrong. But I've always sort of felt from a personal point of view, I've always felt that I always wanted to create my own style. I wanted to create something that looked like my work. And although I spent lockdown building the Legacy collection and building models that were essentially using the techniques and materials and models that Francois Verlinden had created, because I wanted to create that collection, that was almost like a subset of work within my normal sort of sets of work, if you see what I mean. But my own models, I always wanted to create a style. And I think that modelers out there, going back to what Dan said, I think modelers out there are finding this more and more difficult. And this is the question I was going to ask you. So I'm going to ask you this in a roundabout way. I think they're finding it more and more difficult to come up with their own personality in their work and their own style and their own kind of they want to put their soul into their work when they're seeing what other people are doing and they're wanting to emulate that. Where do you think that ends? Where do you think is that going to end? Or are we just going to see more and more clones appearing and less originality?
I talked about this on the Insanity, and it carried over onto the Geeks when we talked about it. It's funny you said that. And it's funny you mentioned Phil as one of those people. His hairspray method 15 years later, after he won Best in Show at Euromilitaire, for that awesome Panzer 4J that he did. Think about him creating his own style and people using that style even today, marketing products to emulate what he did. Now what? It's got to be 15 plus years ago.
Yeah, it must be. Easily, I would think. Yeah.
Easily. And talk about something that stands up today, that model. But to answer that question, I say it all the time. We use this term in the United States. It's called keeping up with the Joneses. When the guy next door's got the nice car, you go out and you want to buy the nice car. They got the nice fence, you go buy the nice fence. They put the new driveway in, you got to put the new driveway in. People in this hobby, and I'm going to take crap for this, and I've said it before and I call people out about it. What do you give back to this hobby? What are you doing? Right? Do you want to just be the same guy doing the same thing over and over again like everybody else and keeping up and like just being like, the follower and not the leader, keeping up with the Joneses? When does it stop, Spencer? I don't know. I don't think it stops anytime soon, because this hobby is all about that. And the problem is and I'm going to say it's very cliquey in some circles. Some circles have a very cliquey group. And I'm not going to say their names here. And whoever's listening, if they're listening, they know who I'm referring to, but that's okay. One thing that I never like is that clickiness. And it's also sharing of information, right? Today, yeah, people are can share, will share information more today than back in the day. Spencer, you remember times people will kept things close to the vest. You go to a show, you want to know how they did something. They ain't telling you how they did it because they wanted to win the award. They didn't want you to win the award. If that's what you wanted in this hobby. If your end goal is winning awards, then the hobby's a lot different to you than it is to me. Because I don't care about awards. That ship sailed years and years ago. I don't enter shows, and for a long time, people give me crap about that even to this day that I don't enter. But that's not a part of the hobby that really brings in any enjoyment or even like would even factor in anything I do anymore when it comes to that. But the keeping up with the Joneses mentality is so prevalent today, right? That some people, I believe, and there's some people, God bless them, they post their models and they might have a lot of issues. Some people are beginners, intermediates, maybe even they consider themselves advanced modelers, sharing their work, and the work you can tell is a little substandard, but they ask for honest critiques. But there's a lot of people out there that I can tell you right now will not share their models because they're afraid of the backlash they're going to get. Go on some, you know what I'm going to say. Again, we don't want to call people out, but there's some Facebook groups that can be very, very rude to people. And being rude and telling people how to improve, depending on how you deliver that critique, can be taken good or bad, right? There used to be a page. Well, there is a page, but they used to do it, but they don't do it anymore because they got called out on it. You used to actually go on other pages and put people's models on their page just to make fun of their work. I don't know if you guys were aware of that.
Yeah, I fell foul of that on a number of occasions. But yeah, it is one of those things. And I agree with you in that sense that there is a degree of kind of clickiness and there is a degree of people not wanting to share how they've done things. And I've said this many times on a number of podcasts. When people ask me how I've done a particular thing, I go to a lot of shows, and if they come up to me and say, "How did you do that?" You know, there is no benefit at all from me saying, "Oh, well, you need to go off and practice and you'll come up with this." Because my job is to disseminate information to people via various media platforms.
Get along here, we're agreeing again.
That's literally my job. But also, by the time I tell them exactly how I've done it, by the time they've reached that level, for whatever that means, I've probably moved on to something else anyway. And surely that's a good thing, because the pleasure I get is to pull people up towards me.
Right.
I don't want to be pushing people down. What the hell would be the point of that? You know, we're here to share.
Right. The boat's sinking. You don't want people to be stuck on the floor that's filling up with water. You want to get them up the ladder and bring them to you. That's the whole idea. Of course. I get messages all day long, whether it's to my personal Facebook page or my Rob Riviezzo modeling page. And Spencer, I know you have your own modeling page. I don't know the amount of messages you get from people, but I can get anywhere from 2 to 25 messages a week with people asking how I did something on a particular build, how I do this, what products to buy, what soldering irons you use, what's the flux, what's this, where can I buy this? Riv, can you help me get this? And whenever it's a person messaging me for the first time, they always start off with, "I'm sorry to bother you." And the first thing I respond back is, "It's never a bother. You can message me anytime." And the thing is, you need to be, when you have a certain, presence in the hobby, you need to let people know that you're available to them, that you're willing to help them or give them, listen, I can't sit there and give you an online tutorial for 2 hours, but I can definitely guide you and help you get to where I think you need to get. And I've developed a couple of pretty good friendships with people that began with the "I'm sorry to bother you" type of message. And then I speak to them on a daily or weekly basis on a messenger, or they come in my Discord build rooms with our Miss Insanity group, because that's what it's about. But like you said, Spencer, there are people that won't do that. There's people who don't respond to me. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't respond to me, but I'm just saying there's people, I send messages to people in this hobby, and I'm like, holy cow, man, am I that? They didn't even acknowledge they didn't even read it. You could tell if they read it. It's still, I got a message I sent to somebody to this day, a week, it still says delivered. It hasn't even been looked at.
Yeah. I mean, I go back to the point I made about being in Chet Payne's presence. I have that I'm not putting myself in the same bracket as Chet Payne. Please don't think I am. But if people come up to me at shows to talk to me, oftentimes I can see them in front of me and I can see the body language and how nervous they are about talking to somebody whose work that they admire. And I always do the same thing. I want to make them feel like they're the only person in the room. So if they've come up to me to speak to me and asked me a question about my models, or they said, oh, I really like your work, oftentimes you get, I mean, a lot of the guys that are on here, Brownie and Dan and Balders and everything, they know me from way back. But if people have never spoken to me before, I think just to stand there and say, what can I do for you? And just talk to them, because that might keep them going for another year. They may then think to themselves, oh, well, I got that information. Oh, what I'm going to do now is that inspires me to go and buy a kit.
Yeah.
You mentioned the 1%ers earlier on, and the 99% of people that don't buy magazines, don't go to model shows, build models on their kitchen table with their family to relax because they want to get away from a crap day at work. Those are the most important people in the hobby. It's not me and you, Rob. We're not the most important people. We're just the conduit that gets information from one place to another that keeps those people going. We're not keeping Tamiya or Revell or Airfix going. Those people who are buying regularly, gluing the parts together, sticking it on a shelf.
I think what it is, my dad's always said to me over the years, even when I was a kid, he said the most valuable thing you can give anybody is your time.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's a massive step. I mean, when I joined my IPMS branch, a 40-year-old guy walking into a room of other 40 plus guys who all know each other, that is one of the most nerve-wracking things you can do. And you're going there just to get in the door is a challenge. You're going there to ask advice about your modelling. You haven't even got to that stage yet. And being at a show, if you're there, Spence, behind a table, I mean, first thing, go, because you get to see Spencer's builds in the real world. And as we were saying earlier, there is nothing like viewing a model with your own eyes. Online's different. Your own eyes is always going to be better. So we've all done it. I've seen people that I know at shows and I respect their work, and they almost feel like they couldn't give you the time of day.
I never want anybody to ever feel, never.
And it's an inconvenience talking to him. And you think, come on, man, and it's really disheartening. It's really disheartening. When we set up at Telford, and I'm not giving it the big us, we've only been doing this for 5 minutes compared to other podcasts out there, but there genuinely were listeners who stood there for 10 minutes on another stall who kept looking over, and it was almost like they were plucking up the courage just to come and say hello to us.
I see that all the time.
And once you break that ice with them and you have the conversation, then it all flows. And then before you know, I mean, the common denominator is we're all talking about models and, dropping parts on the floor and why Riv doesn't paint his models.
Listen, I tell you, it's funny you say that. And I will say that because it piggybacks off what Spencer said and what you said, Dan. Being on a podcast and doing podcasting, you do carry a little bit of a celebrity from it because people listen to you. You got a lot of people listen to the show, and whenever I'm at a show, listen, you're not mistaking this voice anywhere. You'll hear me across the room. I'm so distinctive. It's just the way I am. And I know when I go to like the Nationals, there's going to be a lot of people that I know, and there's going to be a lot of people that I don't know that listen to the show that are going to want to come up and talk. And I always tell people, we just talked about it on the Geeks. Whitey talked about your casting couches. Did you hear me say what I said? I was like, yeah, but those guys are British. They're weird over there. But we'll have our table up. It's just going to be me and Justin at the Nationals this year. The other guys aren't making it, but we're going to have our little station and our microphones, and I'll sit down and I tell people, come sit down. Let's talk a hobby. Let's have fun. And a lot of people are afraid to come over and say hello. And a lot of people come over and they want to say hello, and they should. Because, whether you're a good model or a crappy model, in my bed, whatever the type of model you are, when you're on a podcast and you're giving people enjoyment, people enjoy it. Whether you've been around forever, like that old man in Australia, Dave Goldfinch, who's on episode 234. They jumped the shark about 6 times by now. Sorry, Dave. I know he's listening. Or you got you guys who, God, you guys are releasing a show every freaking other week. My God. We do every 3 weeks. That's more than enough for me. But, people want to meet you. People want to be a part of it because if they feel like when they're hearing you in the car or wherever they're listening at their workbench or whatnot, they feel like they're part of a group of friends. They know you after a while. Like everybody knows me. I'm an open book.
Yeah.
People know what I like, I dislike. They know Debbie's going to run down the stairs if she hears me say anything bad about her. So you see me get hit in the head with the shoe. But it's supposed to be fun because you're giving people something to enjoy, to get away from the mundane everydayness of their lives. I'm not saying everybody's life is terrible, but sometimes people need a break. And listening to these shows and listening to people talk the hobby and get perspectives and stuff is fun. Even though you guys are British, sometimes it's hard for me to understand what you're saying. I get the Google Translate going next to the podcast, so the lady is talking English while you guys are talking whatever language you guys. Who's the guy? Who has the big Scottish accent?
Scottish.
Who's got? Is some of you guys Scottish accent or no? I thought someone on the show. Whenever I listen to it, someone sounds like they're from Scotland. For God's sake,
Probably Boulders.
I have a hard time understanding what they're saying.
It's probably me.
It's probably Boulders. All right, Boulders, talk to me for a minute.
You all right, Rob?
You haven't said a word tonight, so I can't tell.
We couldn't get a word in edgeways.
I'm sorry, it's the problem.
I've just been sat here listening to what you've said, and you do hit a massive amount of nails on the head, because when I first met Spencer, I was petrified. And I said that to Spencer. So the first time I spoke to you, I was absolutely petrified, because he had a reputation of being a really good model. And when you think, yeah, I'm just a mediocre at best, but like Spencer said, he speaks to you and he concentrates on you. So he asks you what you're building and have you done it this way? Have you tried this? And it does give you that confidence boost. It really does. And I think especially when you've got a particular model that is a mojo killer, like for me, it's the P51D Mustang. Can't build one. It just kills my mojo. And then when you speak to somebody that gives you that thing, it sort of pushes you back on to break that continuity of being, why I call it modeler's block, because you just can't do anything with it. You just can't. You sit at the desk and, no, forget it, put everything back away, and then you go sit down and watch television. So, but competitions as well. Yeah, I've never, ever entered a model into a competition.
Never? You never entered a competition ever? Don't. It does not.
Never. Been modeling 35 years and I've never, ever entered a model into a competition, because I always think they're not good enough.
You should, well, that's a personal issue.
Yeah, absolutely. It is.
But we'll get to that. You want to do a session like I did with Nemo? You ready to go? How much time you got?
This is free. He's not charging for this. Bearing in mind, he's from Long Island, mate. There'd be an invoice for the second session.
Hold on. What part of England you from? You live in England?
I do live in England.
Because your accent's 10 times worse than the rest of these guys. I thought you sounded like William Wallace to me when I listened to the show. Isn't he Scottish? Wasn't he Scottish, William Wallace?
William Wallace was Scottish, yeah.
Right. That's what you sound to me. You sound like you're from Scotland, someplace in the Highlands.
No, Mel Gibson's Australian, isn't he?
Who? William Wallace was... Oh, yeah, he was. Well, actually, he's an American who lived in Australia, because Mel Gibson was born in New York.
Oh, that was it, yeah.
All right. Well, listen, man. I'm glad you don't enter shows, because the shows should not define you as a modeler, right? Modelers have this, it's in life, everything you put your time and effort into, people just want gratification, or they want that someone to say that what you did looks good, right? And I use this analogy, right? You're outside, you're putting in bushes or you're putting in flowers. It's spring, you're putting in nice flowers in front of your house. And there's that young couple walking down the sidewalk with their baby. And you want them to acknowledge the fact that you just sat out in front of your house sweating, planting your flowers. You want them to say, wow, your flowers look nice. Because you want to know that all the time and effort you just spent planting those flowers wasn't for nothing. That somebody out there is going to realize how much work you put into putting those flowers in. It's the same thing with your models or your kids. You want someone to say, wow, you got good looking kids, or wow, your kids are so polite and nice. That, as a parent, all those years of me telling my daughter and my son to be good people didn't go in one ear and out the other. That time you put into making them good people, acknowledge it. Same thing with your models. You spend 40 hours at the bench building and painting. You want somebody to say it looks good. It's natural.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now, Riv is getting a little chunky again, but sometimes when I get in shape, when I look nice and get dressed, you want people to go, wow, you look good. Thank you. I just spent the last 8 months not eating. I want to look good. Right? So you want acceptance of what you're doing. Shane is shaking his head. Did Shane talk tonight at all? He didn't even say a word tonight, did he? He's the Steve Santucci. You know what Steve Santucci says to me? How can I talk? You don't shut up. I'm just listening to what you have to say.
Honestly, you're petrified. Like you both have talked so much sense tonight about how, what do you give back to the hobby? What are we doing? We do it for ourselves. We do it to escape. We do it to, inspire others, or even just to influence maybe like my children. I've got 2 young boys. I've got memories of building models with my granddad 30 years ago. on the kitchen table. I just want to give that kind of happy memory back to my kids, or create that memory with my kids. Even like today, me and my eldest son were building a base for his F-16 that we built together. And it's like, it's something I wanted to ask, to be fair, is you talked about this 1% thing. Model for some people aren't confident enough maybe to necessarily ask. But do you think if they do have the courage to ask, that maybe it's an obligation? So like Spence, you said about, of course I'm going to tell you. I'm going to ask you and I'm engage and I'm going to tell you what I know. Do you think it's like an obligation?
I do. Why? I'll tell you. If you're going to listen to me on a show, talk for 2 hours, whether it's enlightening or not, or you want to read an article that I wrote for a magazine or a section of a book that I put time into, or go on my Facebook modeling page and read what I'm working on. If you're going to take the time to do that, I sure as hell better have time to sit down and talk to you about how I did something.
Yeah, a bit of recognition as well. Like you said about even just like not eating for 8 months. Yeah, I want recognition for that, and
right.
Yeah, it's just so important that people feel like they can engage, they can, just be them, that you do you. And whether it's like influence from a technique or how someone approaches something or just a concept of how they go about approaching their build. And like, obviously I do quite a lot of Gundam, and it's all about the vision that you want to have at the end of it, because it's not real. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, latitude in that too,
Exactly. There's a lot of creativity there. But, if I spent 40 hours on the bench, like you said, I want recognition for it.
It's a natural, it's natural. You want recognition for hard work that you do, but we also got to remember that this hobby, which was once very solitary, at a time when this hobby was meant that it was created at a time when it was like you do it at your bench. Remember, look at the old ads for like the old model hobby shops from like the 50s and 60s. It's the little kids they're talking to the old man behind the table, right? Or the old man behind the register. Ever see those pictures of the old 50s and 60s advertisements for hobby stores? There's a reason for that, because the hobby was created for kids. It was a kid's hobby that a lot of like very miserable old men got into at some point in their lives back in the day when they were getting yelled at by their wives. But the hobby was very solitary, and it still is in a lot of ways for a lot of people. They just need to know what else is out there. They're not aware of it. They don't know about this stuff.
Some of it's overwhelming though, Rob.
They don't know about a lot of it though. You'd be surprised. Like I go to hobby shops. I got a big hobby shop here on Long Island. And whenever I go there, like I'm outgoing. You guys say I am. I am outgoing when I go to a hobby shop. Maybe not at a model show, but at like a shop when I'm looking at a model and I see someone looking and I see they're like kind of confused. I'm like, what are you looking for? And I'll talk to them and like, oh, I used to build this model as a kid. I'm looking for this. And then I start talking to them and I show them models that I've built, and someone's kind of giving like the little nuds, like this is what the hobby's about. Most of these people have no idea what's out there. They walk into that hobby shop, they buy that to me a kit because it looks cool. They don't know what it is. They don't go, what's the review? Did Spencer Pollard review this on his Facebook page? They're not asking that question. They're like, did Rob Riv write a review in MMR for this? They're going in, they're buying the kit, they're going home, like I said, at their table. And I think it's our job in a lot of ways is to try to get it out there more for other people to realize that there's a big community out there for people, right? It's not just that local hobby shop like there once was. The military, like hobby, whether it's you build Gundams, you build airplanes, ships, the hobby is huge now. But a lot of people aren't aware of it, except the people that are really involved in it. Spencer will tell you, years ago, like in the 90s and the early 2000s, talk about clicky. Spencer, it was very clicky back then, man.
Yeah, it was. This is a conversation that could be expanded for the next day, really.
Yeah, I know.
But you're absolutely right in that. But I'm sort of interested by all of this because I found over the years that, certainly over the last few years, maybe since lockdown actually, although I post material on my Facebook page and I was writing the blog or whatever and everything, the deeper I get into a project, the less I want to talk to other modelers. And I've got to a point where I remember I was reading an interview with a musician and they were saying that when they were recording an album, they never listened to music. They never listened to any other music because they didn't want to be influenced. And I've spoken to these guys before, and I've also spoken to the Model Geeks guys and all about this. Once I'm in the middle of a project, I don't look at other models. I don't look at Facebook. The only thing I look at is I look at the real thing. I look at my reference pictures of the real thing, because I don't want my brain to be clouded by what other people have done on their models. And I've become more and more insular as the project goes on and become less and less inclined to interact with other modelers.
You have an artist mentality.
Yeah,
that's an artist mentality, and it's very common. It's very, very common to do. A lot of artists, whether it's true artists, like, we're talking about, like, painters and drawers and things like that, cartoonists, musicians, things like that, actors will isolate themselves. And a lot of them, like Heath Ledger was notorious for that. They said when he was doing the Joker that he isolated himself from society for like a couple of months, which sort of tried to get into that Joker mentality. That's common. Like, I consider myself a podcaster, right? Like, that's what I love to do. And if you listen to the first roundtable, we're going to do another one, Brownie. We're getting it set up. We got to figure out that date, but we're definitely going to do it. That's where all, like, everybody from each show gets on. We're going to have a talk like this, but all of us. If you listen to that show, you will hear me say, and I took a lot of crap from Chris Meddings because of it. Chris, if you're listening, he always gives me a hard time all the time anyway. But I even said then that I don't listen to a lot of the other shows, podcasts. And there was a time when I listened to none of them because I didn't want it to influence me as a podcaster on how I did my show. I didn't want that. I didn't want to be influenced by other people's work. I didn't want to have any outside influences of anything we said, how we do it, how we format. So and I do listen to it more. I listen to more now, not as much as I should, but I do listen. And I think that what you said, Spencer, is very common for someone, very, very artsy people that have that art type of mentality. That's common. You'd be surprised.
I don't know whether it's kind of a focus thing.
It is. Yeah, I think it is.
Or as I've got older, I'm only a couple of years off 60 now.
Oh, you're an old man. My God, I didn't realize you were that old.
Yeah, thanks. I've got to that point where where I've become more and more introverted as I've got older, and I second guess myself. And I find going to model shows, if I'm going into model, shops, all that sort of stuff, I've become more and more introverted as I've got on. But that doesn't mean that when people are in front of me and when I'm asked questions,
right?
Do I feel I've got an obligation to answer those questions? Do I feel I've got an obligation to give people time when I'm at a model show? Absolutely. Absolutely. To me, that's the most important thing. Listen, the weird thing is I'm only introverted when it comes to the thing that I do for a living, building models. I'm not introverted when I go to the pub and I watch football with my mates.
Yeah.
Far from it. And I think there's another thing there that, again, you could investigate as well. Is model making something that defines you as a person? I always I build models for a living. That's what I do. That's not what I am. And I never wanted to get to a point where I was only ever, I was a one-dimensional character from some crazy book where all people saw me as was a model maker. Because my friends, my social circle of friends, other than Harris, who I go to the shows with and I do things like that. I'm not including the guys that I interact with online or go to shows with. I'm talking about my close circle of friends. I don't have model makers as close circle in my close circle. I don't have them. I do wonder whether or not that's sort of kept it sort of fresh for me.
Your personality comes out in your work, right?
Yeah, that's what I want, really. And I think that this conversation's been so fantastic because it's been so multifaceted.
Well, that's why Brownie had me on. He was supposed to have me on months ago, and he's like, it's not the right time. We'll get you on another time.
There's so many layers to everybody, isn't there? And that's the one thing that makes the hobby so interesting and keeps us all within it, because we're not one-dimensional characters. We're all different people.
No, not at all.
There's everybody does the mental health show, right? Every podcast has done 1, 2, depending on how long they've been around. I'm sure Dave Goldfinch has done like 17 by now. No offense, Dave. Gotta take my shots, but I'm gonna put my psychology hat on. All right. And this is where it gets interesting and real. The hobby means something different to everybody. Everybody's life experience plays a part in the hobbies that they have, regardless of what it is. It could be hobby modeling, it could be drawing, it could be knitting, it could be needlepoint, pottery, you name it. They can make a list of this bazillion hobbies. This is like Steve Santucci. That guy has a new hobby every week. But I got to get that in there. But the thing is for me, the hobby was something that I did as a kid with my father, because my dad did a lot of HO scale trains and things like that. And my dad was always working on like this huge train layout in my basement. The guy worked, would go down every few hours every week. And my dad was a great man. He was, I think one of the reasons why I'm really good with my hands when it comes to small things is my father was a hand beater for wedding gowns. My dad was my family owned, my father was a dressmaker. Back then it was different because wasn't all automated. My father used to do, like he would do all of like Luther Vandross and Stevie Wonder's outfits. My dad did that stuff. That's what my dad did for a living. He used to do, Vera Wang is a big designer. My dad used to do all her patterns for her dresses by hand. And then they would get done and other people would do them. That's what my father did as a living, just a little backdrop. And my dad used to come home working all day long with his hands, and he was exhausted doing this stuff. And we'd be downstairs once in a while building this train layout. And as a kid, I would go to the hobby shop and I would buy a model and he would do his trains and I would be downstairs with him. He never ran a train in all the years I can remember, but he always was building the freaking landscape. And then he passed away young, 50 years old. My dad passed away. He was dying earlier than that. And that was my memory of the hobby, right? And then when my father got ill and was sick, I needed an escape and I went back to the hobby. That brought me, like I had those memories of being happy and doing something that got me, that was an escape for me as a child. And it was an escape for me when my father was ill and I needed an escape. And then my mother eventually got ill too, but it was something that was important to me. It was like a fortress of solitude thing for me. If any problems I was having in my life, that's what I escaped to. And we all had trials and tribulations and issues and problems in our lives. No, this isn't the Brady Bunch here for everybody, right? Everybody has struggles in their lives. Like for me, my son is severely disabled. Those who don't know, my son is autistic. He's severely autistic. And when my son was being diagnosed as a young boy, that was very stressful in our family. And my wife really struggled with it. And she was a reader. So she would go and she would read her books and I would build my models. And that's how I escaped the troubles that we were having even then again with my own illness and things like that. So I'm not trying to wax poetic, but what I'm saying is our personalities come out in our hobby and we have them for specific reasons. That was for me, was an escape for me. That's how I got through those difficult times in my life, was building a model. That's why it's so important to me. And that's why I try to make it as enjoyable for others as I can, because I see the hobby as an escape from life. Now, Spencer, it's become a job for you. It has become a job for me in some ways, but obviously I have another career and it's still secondary to my regular career. But the hobby takes different hats for everyone, and it's how you experience it. And you want other people to experience it maybe in a similar manner. And to go back what you were saying, Spencer, about sharing your techniques or having conversations with modelers that shows people come up to you that might be intimidated because you're Spencer Pollard. I'm a little intimidated to go talk to this guy. You don't want people to feel that way because you want to be inviting to people and you want to share those experiences with people. So when I'm on a podcast, I can talk about it. But you, on the other hand, I don't know if you're not always on the box art, but when you are, you can talk about those experiences and people will know about it. Sorry, I waxed poetic, but that's the whole idea of shaping your personality. Your personality is shaped like in your hobbies. And in your case, it's modeling. And other people, some people did knitting with their mother and they knitted as adults.
No, it's really interesting.
Yeah. Right? And some other people have other hobbies, like birdhouses. I got a friend as an adult, like he built birdhouses with his dad. As an adult, crazy birdhouses this guy builds and sells. It's like, that's his hobby. It brings him enjoyment. I don't like it, but he does. So it's for each their own,
Riv, can I just ask you one thing?
Sure.
Because I think I've now reached it a while ago, is I'm proud of the hobby and I'm not ashamed to tell people that I do it. But there was definite.
I'm Dan Brazil and I'm a hobby maker. I'm a model maker. He gets up in front of the crowd.
there was definitely that point where, and I've had this discussion when we was at Telford. We had a chap that we know come up, and I've spoke about this before. He said, "Dan, what do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a painter and decorator." And I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm a builder. I'm a bricklayer." Now, if you're a tradesman and you work in that kind of environment, it's a very, guys, and football is the main thing that people, after us British talk about the weather, we then usually talk about football, and it's a good leveler for everybody. I said to
football with the foot, right? Not football tackling.
Proper football, not that stupid dress up stuff, whatever they're doing over there.
Not the rugby game you play.
Proper football. Sure.
Yeah, not that. Yeah. Anyway, right. I said to him, "Does anybody that you work with know what you do for a hobby?" He went, "No way. I wouldn't even mention it." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because I'm afraid of what the reaction will be." And I said, "Yeah, but
really,
you'll probably find, guaranteed, there'll be someone that go, 'My dad used to do that,' or 'I used to do them when I was a kid.' And you never know. That might be the bridge. That person, again, going back to what we were saying, might be having a few mental health struggles. I'm not going to say might, because everybody does at some point. And that might just be the little spark that they need to start a conversation, to talk about kits and whatnot, but then go on to going, 'Are you all right, mate? Is everything okay?' Because I've had that in my club. I've had that in my club. We've had guys that have gone off the scene for a little while, and you can just check in with them, say, 'Is everything all right? You okay?'
Listen, I think we've all been in a place where you got to explain what it means to be to build models or do something. Like, I remember one time I was at my job and I was like, I had a coworker. I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to a model show this weekend." They're like, "Wow, model show? Like, what do you do there?" I'm like, "I usually judge." "Wow, you judge models?" I go, "Well, wow." I'm like, "Yeah, I go backstage. I talk to them." I'm like, "No, you idiot. Plastic models, for God's sake." And I show them, like, "Oh my God." And like you said, they probably did it in their life. Like, "Wow, that's awesome. They have model shows?" He's like, "I built model cars when I was younger." I'm like, "Yeah, they have shows. People don't know." But usually Steve Santucci will sit at the bar with some pretty girls talking to us. And Steve's like, "Yeah, we're here for a model show." I'm like, "Oh, Steve, why'd you tell her that for, man? Could you just bypass the whole model thing? We're talking to this girl here. You just ruined it right now." Oh my God. All right.
Anyway, Rob, thank you very much.
Oh, we talked for too long. We've been going for 2 hours, I think.
Yep, very close to that. You asked the question earlier, how many questions do we have? Well, normally for an interview, we normally produce around about a dozen questions, and a few get answers we go through. I wrote 6 questions and we've asked 3 in 2 hours. So we've done really well.
Oh, shoot. You don't want to ask the other 3? Well, if we can answer them quick.
It's been enjoyable.
You know what? We'll play a game. We'll try to answer it in 20 words or less. Let's see.
Never going to happen. We'll have you back on in the future. We want the real you.
Oh no, let's get you back on.
Have me back on. This was a lot of fun, guys. Listen, I'm sorry for talking too much, but it was a lot of fun.
No, no need to apologise. It's been very good.
Not a problem the slightest.
Oh, you kicked me out and then you finished the show? I don't finish with you?
No, we haven't finished yet. Not quite. What I was going to say was, it's been absolutely brilliant with the discussion we've had this evening, and we haven't spoken to the name people recognise from Military Model International. We've spoken to the voice that people hear that does the rounds. I don't believe the rumour that you actually turn up for the opening of a paper bag, just busting your chops here, but I got to get that line in. We've actually spent time speaking with the modeller behind it all. And I think that it's fair that people don't get to see this side of you very often. And what we've been talking about and going beyond the normal conversations and actually getting into what's going on behind the scenes rather than what you actually see in front. And I fully agree with what you say about shows. If we're at a show and people are thinking, should I come and speak to you? Please come and have a conversation. You're a friend that we haven't met yet. That's the easy way of actually looking at it, because it was like when we were at Telford last year. We haven't been in the game that long then. People coming up and having conversations like they'd known us all of our lives. And it was a case of, we don't know you, you know us. But it gives us the opportunity to actually get to know you more. It's also the reason why our build page, the Benchmates on Facebook, it's not in the public domain so everyone can actually critique and actually talk about it. It's for modelers, by modelers, and it's just there so people who want to go in there and have a look and have a conversation. I know you're a member of it, Rob.
Yeah.
And all of us are in there quite often. I know Spencer's been in there quite often as well, just looking at what's going on. And if you ask a question, you'll probably get an answer. But it's a case of, it's an opportunity for people to speak and actually have a conversation. What we're doing is two-dimensional in some respects with the show, in that obviously we've all got faces for radio, some more than others.
That's true. Dan's got a face for radio.
Thanks very much, mate. Don't worry.
Yeah, pot, kettle.
I didn't see if you were paying attention. You were dozing off there for a minute. You're paying attention.
I don't think you could send anyone to sleep, Rob. You could be a wake-up alarm, I'll tell you that. Get up, you son of a...
Yeah, it's true.
Anyway, Rob, it's genuinely been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, this was great. I really appreciate you having on.
Thank you for doing it, and also thank you for recording the guidelines update for us as well, as John's still probably soaking himself up.
That was kind of rough, man. I was like trying to read it. I'm like, this is written for a different accent than what I was reading it as.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure having you on. We look forward to chatting again in the future.
Yeah. I'm going to get you on the insanity.
Yeah, most definitely.
Dan, I'll get you on the quarter scale. Guys, you too. We got to get on. Yeah, definitely.
Please. Yeah, please, definitely. I'd love to come on there. Yeah. I must just say, Rob, my fanboy moment, I'm trying to build cleaner and trying to build better. And it is because of you, man.
Music to my ears. I really appreciate that. I really do. Thank you so much. All right. So what am I supposed to do? Click out? Do I hit exit? Am I getting kicked out, or do I just hit exit?
Yeah. Exit stage left.
Oh my God. Here comes Mrs. Riv.
Oh dear. What have you said
Hey,
wrong?
Deb, come here. Say hello really quick. You do look horrible. Come on. Say hello.
God, we've been looking at Rob for the last couple of hours.
Deb, just get over. No one cares what you look like. Fantastic. Yeah. Come say hello to my British friend. She can't hear you.
I look horrible.
There's Mrs. Riviezzo.
Hi.
There's Deb. Debbie's usually throwing shoes at my head from the stairs.
That's understandable.
He lies about me. Don't believe his lies.
Don't worry, Debs, we never listen to anything Rob says anyway. With Rob evading target practice, I think that's a good place to draw this episode to a close. A huge thank you to both Rob Riviezzo and Spencer Pollard for what turned into one of the most fascinating conversations we've had in quite some time. On paper, these are two modelers from completely different worlds. One known for armour, weathering and battle-worn realism, the other for aircraft, aviation history and those tiny details that only Spencer seems to spot from 20 feet away. Different subjects, different specialisms, different sides of the Atlantic. And yet the deeper we got into the conversation, the more they seemed to agree on almost everything. Because hearing him and Spencer agreeing that often is something as rare as finding a perfect paint match first time out. What made it such a brilliant discussion was that it never felt like armour versus aircraft, America versus the UK, or one approach against another. It was two hugely experienced modelers talking honestly about the hobby we all love, why it matters, and where they think it's heading. And hopefully that's exactly what Beyond the Box Art is all about. Bringing together people from different corners of the hobby, discovering that, actually, we all have far more in common than sometimes think, or even want to admit. So our thanks once again to Rob and Spencer, and of course to all of you, our benchmates, for joining us, and a special shout out to our wonderful sponsors who've helped bringing this content to you. We just couldn't do it without them. So after the special from DBMK with the news and announcements in episode 26, we're back to our normal fortnightly episode. But episode 28 is a real special episode for us. We've teamed up with Jeff Hyland and Terry Measley from the Scale Model podcast, as the show's been on a hiatus while Stuart is away looking after his better half. So we are bringing you episode 161 of the Scale Model podcast and episode 28 of Beyond the Box Art, all in one. So till then, from Dan.
Dear Benchmates.
From Boulders.
Dear Benchmates.
Was that Scottish?
Hiya, New.
From Shane.
Take care, Benchmates.
James.
Bye, everyone.
From Spencer.
See you later.
From Rob.
See you later, guys.
And from myself, thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you again very shortly.